city you burn, I'm gonna build one high.
Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and it is July 24th, YC128. This is the Eve Universe Show. Welcome, 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 guys. How's it going? I hope everything's good to go. I think everything's fine. We are at the new site. There is a new site in town. We will cover that as part of the patch notes or whatever. But, you know, as these military campaigns have progressed and gets past certain thresholds, FC has been adding in the signs of continued progress. And so this is the Minmatar one. So this is in the system of ammo. The idea behind this is that, so the Starkmynir is the lost tribe of the Minmatar. They were originally thought to be destroyed when Starkmynir Prime was bombarded by the Amarr. They tried to destroy all of the Starkmynir. However, during the events of the Empyrean Age, it was discovered that a small a grouping of the Starkmynir was preserved by the Ammatar, and that was what a lot of that Elder War stuff from the Empyrean Age was all about, was about liberating and rescuing that lost tribe and bringing them back into the fold. So they've been part of this for a while now, but with the military campaigns, the objective of the Minmatar military campaign is to restore the pride of Starkmynir Prime, which is currently in the middle of the Amarr Minmatar war zone. So to that end, if they're successful with their military campaign, then they successfully rename the system, whose name is escaping me at this exact second, or at least that planet in that system, to Starkmynir Prime. But the idea here is that now they're collecting all of the Starkmynir. These are this location is where they are putting together the migratory fleet of all the Starkmynir in order to prepare them to reoccupy Starkmynir Prime as their home planet. So we do see a bunch of other factions involved in all of this. So we have Sebister, Thucker, Crucial, Verocior, Brutor, and Nephinter. All of them are here as security forces for the Starkmynir. But yeah, so that's what we're here to do, or that's what we're here to check out today. And there is some other news about that. I do want to say, as I was here, I was convoyed by a member of the Minmatar fleet. We'll be talking a little bit about the Gallente objectives today, but our friend here wanted to make sure to point out that the Minmatar Fleet Alliance is actively working to pursue the goals of the Starkmynir's restoration project. And so if you are interested in getting involved with that, you can go to the website my.minmatar.org, or the Discord, which is discord.gg/Minmatar, and get involved with the Minmatar Fleet Alliance, which are putting together their agreement, how to do the Starkmynir Prime restoration. But that wasn't actually what was prepared for this week, or for today's show, but it did come up as we were getting ready for it, so I wanted to make sure to point that out. Where are we? How's everybody doing? How's it going, guys? We have quite a bit to cover today. This is the week. We're going to cover everything that's happened in the last week, plus what might be happening in this weekend. On our Friday show, as I'm trying to see if this works out as an idea, especially over the summer. But we do have some news to cover. I just realized I didn't prep this. Hold on. Patch notes and other news. So we're going to start with the patch notes. No, are we? Yeah. Yes, we're going to start with the patch notes. We're going to start at the bottom. Hey, what's up, Stone Skin? Okay. So when we last talked, it was right at the last ending of Project Avalon. And so Project Avalon, which was the Vanguard playtest, ended. By the way, that does mean we do see here that the item traders are going to remain open for another week. So in the event that you still have one of these, which I do, hold on. Hey, what's up, Jeff? if you have any of these resonant ciphers, or more importantly, the ranking Vanguard resonant cipher, which was the final reward for that event, make sure that you get that turned in before the 28th, because that's when the thing will be complete. All of the traders will be removed. And also remember that you want to consider not only which object to get when you trade these things in, which we've talked about before. Honestly, there's really good reasons why you might want the module or either of the skins. But whichever one you choose, it's also worth paying attention to where you trade it in. So if we show info on this, we can see that it can be traded in. It doesn't say. Wait. Huh. That's interesting. I believe it's in all of the trade hubs, and then there's some extra places too. It says so in the patch notes. Let me go look real quick. So it's Amar, Syphilar, New Caldari, Kanaka, Poidot, Dodixie, Ostengale, Renz, Hadazokio, and SL Tech YBS, which the key here, though, is that where you turn it in, it says here, is going to be connected to where the Avalon Flotilla decides to work with, right? Does it not say that here? It doesn't. Where does it say it? So these can be traded for volatile boosters, which are going to the salvaging drone, the new Skinner components, the breach control, and the new character background, as well as that final reward. There is a note. I can't find it right now, but there was, like, the whole thing about this is that where you decide to turn these in is going to influence which faction ends up being the first one that Avalon sides with, right? So basically, there is a certain amount of like loyalty. If you want the Vanguard soldiers to side with any given empire, you're going to want to trade it in that empire's turn-in point, right? So if you want to support the Mimitar, you'd want to trade it in Renz. If you want to support Caldari, then you'd want to do it in New Caldari. If you want to do it in Dodixie or Glente, Dodixie, and for the Amar. The other systems are kind of interesting, but you know, like there is a part of me that really, really wants the Intaki Syndicate to get the most trade-ins, but obviously that probably isn't going to happen. Yeah, CCP, I assure you, it has been said multiple times. It was a big piece of all of this. I'm pretty sure I can't find it 100% right now, but it is definitely in there. Either way, we have until the 28th to turn those in. Where are we? Back up. Okay. So then there was an issue where the Nest icon would not appear on Neocom panel for some players. I did find that to be true, where it's like the Neocom or the New Eden store wouldn't actually show up until you actively opened it. I was very curious as to why that was happening. I guess they're calling it a bug now, so that explains that, I suppose. Was there any fun puzzles with these ciphers, or are they just ISK tokens? They're just ISK tokens. The idea is that, like, the encryption of infomorphs and all that sort of stuff. Like, remember, this is like a secret cyber war, basically, between the Vanguard and Aegis through Nemesis. Like, that's basically the entire story of what was going on. I still do really want to cover all of that, although I'm still trying to see if we can digest it all. I do also, for instance, like, there's so much of like happened with Avalon that is set up for the future, right? Like, for instance, we are getting no tracking to see about this whole like turn-in thing to see who gets it the most. There's been no like follow-up to let us know the progress or anything like that. But then also there was at the very end of the chain for Vanguard, like the big thing to build towards during the Avalon project was the Squire Core. And it was incredibly difficult to buy the blueprint, and then took a whole bunch of resources to build it. Very few people did. And allegedly, characters that had that thing in their inventory when the game ended then that would be like that will be recorded and meaningful in some meaningful way. I was not one of those people, and so we'll have to find out. But that is like, there's so much of this that we may not know the true ramifications of it until we get closer to even the next Vanguard playtest. So unsure. Although today we do have, we are going to watch among multiple, what we've got queued up today is Vanguard did just post a video discussing the conclusion of it. So maybe there'll be some clues there. I haven't watched it yet. Could you imagine being alive? I apparently don't have to. What is up, Clue? It's so good to see you, man. You should definitely hop on Discord after this and we can chat some. It's good to see you again. I know you've been living the wildlife, as it were. I couldn't push it myself to play it for the 2 hours myself. I did. Okay, so I did play some Vanguard. But I'm also realizing that, like, I'm starting to get to that age where I don't get to play games competitively anymore. Not just because of my own, like, human body, but also just, like, my time. I just don't have the amount to dedicate to, like, build back up that muscle precision. People made fun of my play when I was playing Vanguard the other day, which I was very, like, my brain was fried in general, but it's one of those things that, like, it takes a couple of hours for me to play along with it to, like, for my muscle memory to really dial in on the tuning of that particular playtest of, like, shooting and stuff. So by the end of it, I was doing a lot more, like, better when it comes to my own just, like, moment to moment performance of hand-eye coordination and stuff. But it made me realize that, like, I'm not going to be one of these guys that just grinds on this stuff for, like, multiple hours a day to get super, super good. In the end, the average person I run into in that game is going to just be better than me at the game because they're just on average going to be playing it more than me. And it's something I'm kind of accepting. Although we'll see what happens when we get closer and closer to, like, or as Vanguard becomes more fleshed out, maybe that will change. But as Vanguard is in a pure extraction shooter sense, that is definitely true. But yeah. My issue is that it's got the UI and gunplay of a competitive shooter and the frustrating aspects of Tarkov. Oh yeah, like, it is definitely, I mentioned it's kind of a step back in its design, much more towards just a simple extraction shooter as opposed to previous playtests that kind of built out from the extraction shooter base. But again, a lot of that has to do with the fact that this is now alpha instead of pre-alpha, where they're building things, the core components, in their real mode, instead of just, like, these spike solutions that let them test pieces of it. So it makes sense that this was kind of more of a foundational version of it. And so I am excited to see how things change between here and the next playtest, but we'll have to see. The problem is that you're playing it as a shooter and not a melee fighting game. The Nova Knife is very strong. It is true. I did have a lot of fun with that. But I will say, so, like, even though I wasn't able to bring myself to play that much, even, like, but this even resulted in the actual, like, Avalon in Eve thing, where, like, I really enjoy the idea of, like, sitting around and waiting for the Avalon thing to pop up and then go rush there and do that. But then, like, the feeling of, like, needing to compete with everybody over the sites ended up just, like, I was like, I don't need to, I just can't be bothered with that. I've got other things to do. And so in the end, I did do, like, the cheesy mode where you could pick the same task in Vanguard and then turn in the stuff and then just cancel the task and then relaunch the thing. I actually videotaped the whole thing if you guys want to see that. But you could kind of cheese it by doing the same task over and over and over again. And I thought that was actually pretty cool. I want to talk about this more when we get to the Vanguard video, though. So I'm going to hold off on talking deeper about that. When we get into the Vanguard video, I'm sure I'll have more things to say about the conclusion of the Vanguard. Okay, so more patch notes, though. Let's see. Okay. The Strategos Dreadnought wreck now has the correct icon. Sure, cool. The drones that fly around under construction stargates now correctly fire their lasers in intended locations on the structure. Good stuff. A fixed issue is ship animations would jump between normal and warping while docking. That's kind of funny. corrected a number of typos around agent missions. By the way, I do always put now all of the hobo leaks that have anything relevant to them in the links down below. So with any of these patch notes, if you want to go see the hobo leaks version of them, they are in the links down below. And fixed an issue with mercenary tactical operation sites being unreachable. I did hear about this, that somebody was saying like, oh, I really wish I could do my own Merc Den sites. Apparently there's a bug involving that. There has been a lot of bugs when it comes to site spawning and rat spawning within sites since Cradle of War has spawned, or started rather, or released, I suppose. Not sure exactly what's going on there, but it seems like they're tweaking things that's kind of having some, they're having to chase down these bugs as it influences things. Sandbox versus Gankbox design. Sandbox, everybody shares the same box and does things in that box that can bump elbows. Gankbox is when everyone is funneled towards a narrow band of activities where they typically get shot in the back. Yeah, and like that is a big challenge when it comes to EVE Online in general, right? Where it's like, is EVE just a game that gets people to set themselves up so that way shitty people can be shitty to them, right? Is it a game that convinces you to commit pieces and like your effort and your time and your energy into something to set you up to be disrupted by someone who just wants to mess with people? And that is a very kind of cynical, negative way of looking at the game. I like to think of it as being successful in spite of the challenges that are in front of it. You know, the harsh environment makes the progress and the things that you do create meaningful, even if they are temporary. The problem is that there needs to be a balance in how protected the castles are versus how easy it is to kick over the boots. But the real problem with Vanguard is that it's not a sandbox. A sandbox is about your way of impacting the world around you. And other than setting off the traps to make it so that the enemies become active, there's no real way for you to meaningfully impact the maps themselves or anyone else's experience other than be the opposing force for them, which that doesn't make sandbox to me. That's just PvP. Sandbox is the ability to manipulate the environment. And to that end, I don't think that Avalon was sandboxed at all, or like a sandbox game at all. Nothing about drifters yet? Okay, great. Dutch is actually still currently testing because we've been watching. Allegedly, something has gone wrong with the drifters. Drifters in drifter holes no longer use their doomsdays, which is pretty crazy. Dutch Gunner has been testing this in both K-Space and Pochfin, or at least trying to, but has had some setbacks in that, is testing that today. I'd love to get some feedback from him if he gets any more information, but current word is that nothing new to report. That's why you become a whale in the market, manipulate markets. Well, I mean, like, yeah, that's another way that the EVE Online is a sandbox, but EVE Vanguard wasn't. Now, what's interesting about EVE Vanguard was that, like, so people might want to say, oh, shoot, no, that's going back into what I was going to wait till later to talk about. It's probably a bug, but I hope that CCP actually leans into it. Oh, the drifter thing. I think at this point, since it has been noted and it has been talked about on the IGC, and it has even been mentioned in the nerds, at this point, I think that the lore will need to at least acknowledge the fact that it has happened. Whether or not they get their doomsdays back, there now needs to be a recognition that it happened. And it needs to be meaningful why they might have gotten it back. It could be as simple as like, oh yeah, when they got kicked out of the drifter holes, they might have lost their major construction sites, and so now they've re-onlined their construction sites, and so they're producing them with doomsdays again. Or we may not actually, like, we might not get the actual explanation for it, but the problem, the way that this game works is that, you know, we got to play the ball where it lands. Things that happen in the universe happen. So at this point, the drifter is no longer doomsdaying people is a thing that has happened, and so needs to be acknowledged at some point, I would say. Not to spoil, but watching the Vanguard video will answer some of your comments. I bet they will. Okay. Now then, the big one, though. Is this the big one? Yes. So the big one is from yesterday, which is the rampant drone fabricators are back. So to cover this, we're actually going to jump into the dev blog that was put about it. Rampant drone fabricator sites are back. Very, very cool. This was, I mean, like, we knew this was going to happen. They had said that this was going to happen. The only thing that we didn't know was how long of a timeline it was going to be. We also knew that they were going to be returning to wormhole space. This is something that Okami and others had told to us while they were happening. What we weren't sure about was how they were going to change in the meantime. So that is the thing. They are now available back in wormhole space. I actually don't know how common they are. That is one of the questions that I still have, and we might try to look into today as we look at videos potentially. What if we're the bad guys? I have always said that we are the bad guys. We actually are definitely the bad guys. If you guys go back and watch my iceberg, like at the bottom of the iceberg is some of the most fun, crazy tinfoily theories that we have. And one of the theories is that we are the sleepers. And by we, I mean the players of the game. You, the player of EVE Online, is actually a sleeper living in the sleeper construct, and you have forgotten that you are in a virtual reality construct, and that the other is trying to remind us that we live in an illusion. And by doing so, they are manifesting as the drifters in EVE Online, because that is the other is trying to convince the sleepers that they are still asleep. Don't worry about it. Fun time. It's great. But yeah. Okay. Rampant Capsuleers. The Gallente election was your first chance to experience the rampant drone fabricator sites. Okay, but why is Earth and Zarzak, Mr. Other? Well, if I say that the entire thing is just a simulation, then that by default justifies any anomalies in the simulation, right? Like, why is that there? I guess it's because it's a glitch in the Matrix. Also, wait, Earth is in Zarzak? I haven't heard that one. That's actually one I haven't heard. All right. The Gallente election was your first chance to experience rampant drone fabricator sites. Thanks to your feedback, they are now... you don't remember the screenshot? Oh, I think I do remember. I do remember the screenshot. Yeah, go ahead and send it to me again. Earth was also in one of the Vanguard tests? Uh-oh. It's all a dream. All right. Thanks to the feedback, they are now being made permanently available in C1 through C6 wormholes with a couple of changes specifically tailored to wormhole space. I think that means, correct me if I'm wrong, that means that they shouldn't be showing up in shattered wormholes at all. So there's only the normal occupiable wormholes that they are finding themselves in. Face escalating waves of rogue... Also not Thera. Face escalating waves of rogue drones with the threat level now building based on a point system known as rampancy. The escalating threats are determined by the ship in proximity to the fabricator. So originally, the fabricator site is really cool because it's this like dynamic site, right? The site gets harder every cycle, and it's about seeing how deep, how many iterations into the run you can get. So it's kind of like a roguelite in that sort of sense. But it gets more difficult in two ways. One, as time goes on, more, the further stages get harder than the previous stages. But there are also two stages of escalation that they added in. If you brought a battleship of any kind, that would enter into escalation 1, the first tier of escalation. And then if you brought a capital ship, then that would escalate it further, right? So there was like the normal level, and then there was a level if you brought a battleship, and then there was the level if you brought a capital. Now, the issue with this is that it didn't actually matter how many of the subcaps that you brought. So you could bring one battlecruiser, or you could bring 30 battlecruisers, and the site would function the exact same way, right? So what they've done is they've changed that. Instead of having these hard thresholds where it's like if you bring this ship type, it triggers it, and if you don't, then it doesn't. Instead, now all of the ships are being awarded points, and if you hit certain point thresholds, that's when it enters into its harder states. Okay, so even if you bring a fleet, now that fleet could trigger that harder state depending on the point system. Okay. The more waves you destroy, the bigger your rewards will be. Not only that, but because you were so good at these, we had to up the ante and increase the wave cap from 30 to 100. Translation, it's hard. That's wild. So I did look at the Hobo leaks and stuff at this whole thing. This is the one from this, right? And we can see that they didn't actually add any new rats at all. All these rats are for the actual the Stark Meteor Restoration stuff. And we do see some changes, like the jamming strength and stuff being edited to these guys, and we will see that in the patch notes too. But what that means is, other than that, these sites appear to be, like, the rats in the sites appear to be the same. They didn't add new rats, they didn't add new things like that, so it's just going to scale up in how many of the bigger, badder rats there are, right? 100 waves is crazy. So, like, it's not easier. Like, wave 30 should be just as hard as it used to be, but now it actually gets even harder all the way up to 100. So we'll have to see what it takes to actually hit wave 100. I haven't heard anything about that yet. Sent it. Hold on. Oh, right. Right. Yes. Here is allegedly a very Earth-looking planet in Zarzak, because it says it's right there in Zarzak. This, I can't remember where this picture was put in though, right? This was just like a fun filler picture. Like, no one ever suggested this was canonical, right? This was just like a stand-in graphic. In FC stream today, a group said they got to level 98 after 5 hours. It was in the client. Wait, no. No, but the tinfoil is strong. Yeah, I mean, I put this up there with, like, the the image that they posted of Alphanon. No, yeah, the guy, the lady that would eventually become Soldrin, when she shows up as Alphanon, the SOE epic arc or SOE agent. You know, they do those sorts of things when it comes to, like, stand-in graphics sometimes, and it's wrong. But that said, fun tinfoil. Probably might be true. Might as well be true. Anywho, okay. The extremely brave can attempt to tackle the sites solo for at least the same first half. You're unlikely to survive past 40 waves or so, but they are tailored for small teams to tackle together. Push your luck and see how long you can hold out. We did it with Drekovex, a team of like 5 Drekovex, and that was pretty good. So we're going to see how many points 5 Drekovex is worth. Push your luck and see how long you can hold out, but know that you can flee with the loot you've acquired at any time, or keep going and hope that you survive for even more. Anytime is a poor choice of words, because, like, you only get to flee with the loot once you've destroyed the fabricator. So maybe if you bookmark it and come back, I don't know. I don't remember how that exactly works, but, like, once the wave has started, the fabricator locks back down. So you can't actually just, like, pop the fabricator and run at any time. You have to, once the wave has started, you've got to finish that wave, otherwise the stuff is gone, if I understand correctly. I wouldn't call it canon, but it's fun to pretend it is. Yes, that's true. I mean, I did just point out my theory that, like, we are the sleepers, so I suppose that's the level of wildness I was at, so that makes sense. At any rate, for details, refer to the patch notes. Okay, let's do that. All right. So the site is back in C1 through C6. It has a maximum wave from up to 100. I do remember it was more difficult. It's more difficult in higher tier wormholes, right? I think. Either way. All right, so the first escalation, equivalent to the previous battleship escalation, occurs at 12 rampancy. Okay, so what does it take to get 12 rampancy? A battlecruiser other. Okay, so our group of 5 Drekovex would only have a rampancy of 10 by themselves. If I had brought 1 command ship with it, they would be 11. So you could have 4 Drekovex and a command ship and still do the lowest order tier of the site, right? And then as soon as you bring up to 2 battleships, if 2 or more battleships show up, or 1 marauder, you have now entered into tier 1 rampancy or whatever, right? The second escalation, as the middle escalation tier, occurs at 36 rampancy. Okay, So this is 3 Marauders or a Force Auxiliary ship by itself will trigger the harder rampancy, which is kind of an interesting idea, where you can have a Force Auxiliary and then a handful of battleships. You could get away with like 5 or 6 battleships and still not hit the next tier. And so you have your facts to be your Logi and then your battleships for fighting. That could work in theory. The final escalation, which is the same as the capital escalation, will occur at 72 rampancy. So that would take a capital to do, or I suppose if you brought 6 Marauders, yes, 6 Marauders, that would count as well. Or you could bring a fleet of 36 battle cruisers to do your best against the hardest escalation. Yes, the rampancy does increase the reward. The current rampancy value will appear in the info panel objective between waves. The threat level for the upcoming wave will now appear in the info panel objectives between waves. And each ship will add an amount of rampancy as shown in the table below. So we're looking at that right now. That's actually pretty good. I mean, this is a pretty cool idea, especially since, like I said, we could do the exact same setup that we did all the way up to tier 30 or wave 30 and not necessarily trigger the next wave. So I feel like there's a lot of good ways of engaging with this site with a lot of different kinds of configuration for the different challenge levels. It's a very fun site. Rampancy allows players much more control over the level of risk and reward they want to take on. It also means, in theory, the other fun piece of this is that if someone comes into the site, they could theoretically trigger a further degree of escalation as well. It's a great idea to promote group PvE that isn't going to be straight up botted or bling box. I agree. Well, we'll see whether or not how bottable it is, although it probably is pretty good. I love the idea that this is the kind of thing that someone could experiment with solo, but then will certainly want to like build up a team to go do them together if possible. Especially for wormholes, I think this is perfect. This is the perfect kind of content for wormholes. At this point, it's only a question of how common they are, because wormhole groups are usually pretty small, pretty like tightly committed to each other and want to do activities with each other. And I think that this is a significant improvement over just the common, sleeper sites that you would find. It could be multi-boxed for sure. But I still think it would almost certainly be better, especially with the scales that we're talking about and the fact that drones aren't really a good solution. I still think it's one of those things that's just going to be better with friends instead of trying to multi-box your way through it. Because multi-boxing usually relies on, okay, I'm going to bring so much redundancy that the fact that I'm not controlling any individual character with maximum efficiency kind of doesn't matter, right? Because like I bring so much to the table that it overwhelms the thing. But in this case, the more you bring, the more complicated and demanding the site becomes. And so trying to multi-box it past a certain point without being like real people behind each character or without botting, I think is going to be really, really hard. In addition to that, you still have to find the sites. A lot of things that are abused by multi-boxers or botters are often things that can be like, what's the word? Consistently spawned, right? Things like abyssal, or not, the abyss, or anomaly, ratting and nullsack, or even like home fronts. These are the kind of things that like as a cycle it can just keep on doing it. If you're just, oh, there's a fabricator in my system, I need to run it, like sure you can multi-box it, but then you're just done with that one and then it's done. And so like the more you can get out of it, it behooves you to go get your friends together in your best setup that you can do it, and then do it as hard as you possibly can do it. And that's kind of what it encourages. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think it's going to be long-term very, very good. We'll have to see. I hope it's a new paradigm. The total quantity of fabricator data accrued within the fabricator will now appear in the info panel objective, so you'll know how much reward is built up. So every single time, every single round, you'll be able to see, like, if you leave now, you've got this much, which is kind of nice. It did reduce the ECM strength of the NPCs. This was a critical one, especially for fleets. Trying to keep track of, like, if anything was going to mess with you, it's going to be the jamming rats. And we can see that in here, like, these jamming strengths were reduced by about 10%, 10-15% or so across the board. And then destroyer size E-War NPCs will now use sensor dampeners rather than ECM. That's pretty cool. Damps can be annoying, but usually things that damp are also going to be closer, so it just means, you know, you still have something to do. It will have the bewildering prefix, so let's go ahead and look at that real quick. So yeah, so bewildering lathe has been changed significantly. So yeah, there was destroyer and frigate ECM ships, but now they have been swapped to dampening ships, and they also had their names changed. From blackout to bewildering. Wormholers have multi-boxers. I mean, yeah, I'm not saying it's exclusive to multi-boxing, and like, honestly, like, what I expect to see is a hybrid of the two, right? Where you'll have like 2 or 3 people get together, but then some of those people will likely bring 2 or 3 characters potentially, right? Depending. Like, that's the thing is that, like, it does somewhat encourage multi-boxers for a lot of other reasons, right? If you've got a second character, I need characters on wormholes to make sure that things are not coming through, or to doorstop them or whatever, right? You'll need your characters to be doing a bunch of different stuff at the same time. So I think that there'll definitely be multi-boxing involved in fabricators, but like, to truly scale up, I think it's just going to be better to have friends, which is good. Battlecruiser size E-War NPCs now use target painters instead of webifiers. That's a lot more dangerous. Webifiers kind of end up being not overly spooky, given the fact that you're not moving a whole bunch in the site anyways most of the time. But now target painters are going to be making it so the E-War, the things are going to be applying a lot better, especially the more nastier battleships, which is spooky. And so once again, they have had their name changed to Scrutinizer. So they went from so the Alienators, which were really a high threat target in some cases, became Scrutinizers, which I think actually theoretically makes them an even higher target, especially if you're going with like battle cruisers or hacks or T3 cruisers. What are T3? Where are T3 cruisers on this? So strategic cruisers are worth 4, so they're less than so they're worth 2 battle cruisers for a strategic cruiser. Higher Sig Bloom is always scary. Hobby 07. We could do a Fox. Yeah, we could do a Fax and a BC and not trigger the capital. That's what I was saying. Like, we could replace our dude with a Fax and still just do the second tier escalation, which actually could be pretty cool. All right, and then now there's also nanoswarms. So to understand how this works, hold on a second. Is this gonna work? No. Hold on. Nope. I was looking to see, let me check one more thing. Nope. I could find the video. I have the video of us running the fabricators. But basically the idea is that you have the center of the site, where a lot of the rats are, and then underneath it there are all these little nanoswarms, and in between, at certain points and stages throughout the process, several, I think it's several of the nanoswarms unlock. You kill one of them, and then that gives your whole fleet a buff for the remainder of that run. That's the other thing that makes it very roguelite, because like depending on which buffs you get might greatly impact your ability to go really deep into it. So they did add some new ones. So there's one for light fighter damage, there's one for fighter velocity, one for turret optimal range, and one for missile flight time, which is interesting because that implies they are giving more concept to carriers running this, carriers running this, which fine. But also this optimal range and flight time bonus, as I just said, like a lot of people like to stay really tight in the center, but especially given the fact that you're vulnerable to people coming into the site, it may very much behoove you to be at range. And if you're at range, then these bonuses for either missiles or turrets will be a big critical piece to all of that. It also makes those dampeners a lot more dangerous, because you can like survive a jam, but those damps are going to make it so you can't apply down to those guys until they get closer. The nanoswarms will now be vulnerable during the following waves: 5, 10, 15, 25, 35, 45, 65, and 85. Drone rewards will now begin dropping from wave 1. So this is the biggest news out of all of this, which is that like they added in all those new hybrid drones, and they were mostly gotten through the fabricator sites. There were some that were gotten from turning it in for the presidential campaign, but the better ones were usually gotten through the fabricator sites. And so we got these new cool like web hybrid drones, target painter hybrid drones, all those hybrid drones, which are very, very cool. But with the fabricators gone, their value exploded because they didn't have an ongoing source. So now that ongoing source is back. So those hybrid drones are very much back on the menu, boys, which is very cool. And it looks like they are going to be even more common from the sites now, because even a solo dude doing it for like 8 or 9 waves will be able to get some drones potentially. 07 Ragtag reduced the per wave drop chance of drones, so you can get them earlier, but the chances of getting them in any given wave has gone down. That probably means that like at a certain point there's like a break-even point or whatever. The average drop quantity of drones will now scale as the wave count increases. Note, in effect, while these drones will drop more rarely, their quantity will scale much higher. The resulting average number of these drones dropped by wave 30 has slightly increased. So again, if you're only doing it for a couple waves, you now have a chance to get drones when you didn't before. If you're doing between, like, say, 5 and 30 waves, your chances of getting drones has gone down. But if you do get drones, the number of drones that you've gotten has gone up, to the point where now, if you've made it all the way to the wave 30, which is the old ending of it, you'll actually, on average, end up with more drones than you did before. Exchanges for resonances are over on the 28th. You have until next Tuesday, right? Yeah, until the 28th. So next Monday would be the last day to turn them in. All sizes of TP1, TP1, I think, SD1, and TD hybrid drones have been added as possible drops. That would be the target painter, SD Tech 1? Is it 1 or I? L? Is it L? Okay. It is sensor damp. That makes sense. Well, my search results are not showing anything. So target painter, sensor damps, and tracking disruption, I want to say. Hybrid drones have been added to possible drops. That is because, if I remember correctly, those are the ones that were gotten through turn-ins with the presidential campaign. So now all of the new hybrid drones are available in the Rogue Drone Fabricators. Hold on. If I literally copy this and paste it into my search window, do I get it? Nope. Interesting. What if I do this? Nope, nothing. Interesting. Okay. Note that these drones have significantly lower drop rate than existing drone types. They have been added as an addition and will not dilute the existing drone rewards. So again, like, so they've mentioned like overall there's going to be slightly more drones dropping than before, and it sounds like the majority of that slightly more will be taken up by the fact that these drones have been added to the loot tables. So you're just as likely to get the web of fire drones as you know, like, it doesn't reduce the chance of getting a web of fire drone. It just means that you can get these now too, and it has a lower drop rate because these were highly supplied in comparison to the fabricator sites, the ones that were gotten through the presidential elections. I'm sure more of those got created through the process of people doing the presidential election. So they start out with a lower drop rate to compensate for that. Increases the damage applied in the C5, C6 sites, which that confirms, yes, it does get harder. There's 3 different difficulties, if I remember correctly. It'd be nice if they mentioned that in here, but whatever. Smart bombs are no longer blocked within the proximity of the fabricator, but smart bombs, bombs, and Vorton projectors will now deal 95% less damage to the site's NPCs, nanoswarms, and fabricator. So they're really trying to, like, okay, well, you can bring smart bombs, you can bring bombs, you can bring Vorton projectors into the site, but they are incredibly ineffective within the site against the rats. Remember, this is in wormhole space, so this is where player combat can also occur. So it isn't off, but it is not applicable basically to the site. Bombs are being used to clear waves almost instantly, regardless of the wave number. To avoid having to block the modules themselves, the damage of AoE effects have been reduced significantly when applied to NPCs and objects within the site. This allows players to use the weapons in any PvP that occurs while in the site while still requiring active gameplay to progress it. Decreases the additional damage applied to carrier ships to 40% from 50%. So now carriers receive even less damage. They really, really, really want fabricators to be applicable to carriers. Note, command carriers will receive the full 100% damage increase like other capital ships. Interesting. Now, obviously, command carriers do bring their awesome boosts, and they do have better resists than the standard carrier, but that definitely means that they don't, or I don't know, why doesn't FC like their own stuff? That's what I want to know. Decreased the site's respawn timer. The fabricator can now be repaired. Wait. Decrease the site's respawn timer. Does that mean there's a fabricator in every... I guess no, because it'll respawn. It doesn't necessarily respawn in the same system, right? So, but like, once finished, it'll respawn somewhere in wormhole space sooner. So, less downtime for the site as a whole. But like I said, I don't think that you could consistently like run these things all day in your home hole or something like that. You'd have to continue to hunt down new copies. The fabricator can now be repaired. That's fun. We did have so what's interesting is that like sometimes the fabricator takes more damage than you can do in a single down cycle. So we would often damage it down to hull so that way we can pop it when we're ready without too much of a problem. But there was also issues of occasionally people attacking the thing. And so being able to rep it will help with that. It also could theoretically make people be able to disrupt the site in a weird way by like stopping you from being able to kill it and forcing you to go into another into another wave. I just don't see that necessarily happening too much. This will be a new event, right? You have a vid on how to prepare for this event. This is not a new event, and we have actually... I showed videos before about running this site. I'd have to look up where the actual video is, but I do have the video. I'll find that and show it off at another time or whatever. But this is the rogue drone fabricators from the Gallente presidential election. They are effectively the same as they were before with these changes that we're talking about. So definitely something we will cover in the future. And like I said, if you go back to the presidential election stuff, there were several times that I talked about it and even showed the video of us running it. So yeah. Improve the visuals of the site. That's cool. Hear me out. Bring as many frigates as possible. Go as far as you can. And if you die, you're out. The last 3 to 5 alive gets the full loot. I like that idea. That's a cool idea. Updated the icon for rampancy data dump commodities. What does it look like? It's definitely got some... Definitely got some Vanguard art vibe to it, right? Like it's got the same kind of their new art style, I guess, maybe? I can't remember. Does anybody remember what this says? I can't remember what this says. Hold on. It says, I was a spark that became a conflagration, but all I ever wanted to be was. I remember that now. Okay, yeah. All right. Something about becoming bigger. Yep. It says, I was a spark that became a conflagration, but all I ever wanted to be was. And it ends. Okay, updated various messages for better clarity and to reflect the site's evergreen status. And Fabricator NPCs are now separated into overview groups based on their hull size. Note that these groups are part of the default overview, but will need to be enabled for existing custom overview settings. That is true. As with pretty much any patches that involve new things, you just have to go into your overview, go into your overview settings. And what I would recommend is you just go to Entity, and you right click. This is for your, like, anything that you want to show NPCs for, right? Any overview that you want to show NPCs for. You just right click Entity and go select all. And then that's all the different types of rats that can be available. And then you just save it. And then it's locked in. So that allows you to get any sort of NPCs that are visible. And we can see that they are... No? Yeah, Fabricator, Rogue Drone, Battleship, Fabricator, Rogue Drone, Cruiser, Fabricator, Rogue Drone, Battle Cruiser, Destroyer, and Frigate. So those are the ones that you are looking for, but that is how to add them to your overview. The reason why this is because your overview is saved as a local file with a text file that lists all the things that are on it. So FC can't add it to your overview if you're using your own custom overview. You have to add it yourself. That is true anytime that they add new things to the overview. That would be the PvE overview. Yep. Although I often like to show NPCs on my PvP overview because they, they can matter. Okay. As the Mimitar Republic's Starkmere Restoration campaign starts to show early signs of initial success, the first group containing the most hopeful Starkmere settlers have arrived in the Mimitar War Headquarters system of ammo. That is what we are looking at here. It's a pretty cool site. You've got, like I said before, you can see there's a bunch of rats or, NPCs that are guarding the site, but then there's also the actual, like, tribesmen themselves. They are not NPCs. They cannot be targeted or shot at, but they are here. A bunch of hauling ships. There's also this interesting... I've never seen a Sino device quite like this before. And of course, there's the plinth that shows Mimitar ownership and their new supply drop stuff that we also saw in the Caldari one. So this is in the system of ammo, which is the war headquarters for the Mimitar. I assume because, like, since it's in the war zone, like, arguably you could just set up a shipcaster into the system Arzad. I think it's Arzad, right? Yeah. And then, just jump the fleet there once it's time. But they're currently preparing for it. What's interesting is that, like, with these rats being this way, I think you could theoretically shoot at these dudes. I don't recommend it. You're probably going to get concorded if you do. They're also listed as faction warfare cruisers, so I wonder what would happen if you came into this area as an Amar militiaman. One way to find out, somebody should try. Oh, there's a mass test over the weekend? Can you link that to me? And then the site of the Uranichi Continental has been given a permanent landmark to commemorate the best view in the region. Can someone please tell me what this is a reference to? I feel like this should be a thing I understand. Uranichi is where the birthday bash was, right? I don't... It was added to Hobo Leaks. We can see the wreck of the Continental. We can't really see what it looks like, though. It says, once this was the perfect place to have a drink, relax, and take in the view. Oh! I'm assuming this was a station that got blown up. This was the station that got blown up and everybody made a big fuss about, right? Yeah, okay. That was before it was attacked by those who wished to clear Pochvin of all upwell structures. Over 700 billion Iskin ships were destroyed during this battle for the region's future, and now the wreck remains as a testament to that struggle. It's interesting that they picked this one to be the first one to, like, show off, although it did have a really good view, and it did get a lot of people's attention on this task, but I mean, like, it's definitely not the first big structure to get blown up in Pochvin. But I do believe it's the first one to actually get commemorated with a final wreck. And then ESI, fixed an issue where newly created characters, corporations, or alliances could be incorrectly reported as non-existent on ESI until the next server downtime. Man, the fact that they... I cannot believe that military campaigns and other stuff do not get tied into the ESI yet. How many more? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how many more structures are in Pochvin. That'd be a fun thing to look into. And then also fixed an issue where escalations could occur without the required prerequisites within rampant drone fabricators, whatever, cool. Some Homefront operations NPCs incorrectly attacking drones and other NPCs. So I guess they're making it so that Homefront operations NPCs attack drones less? Not sure about that one. And bombs will no longer apply damage to many non-interactable objects within sites. I assume that as they were fixing the rogue drone fabricators to not allow bombs, they also decided to, like, apply that to a bunch of other stuff. It would be effects per type, right? No? Huh. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I imagine it would be this bomb damage resistance, but I would expect to see that bomb damage resistance be applied to a bunch of stuff, but I don't... Wait. No, those are the fighter stuff. It's weird that they put it in, but it doesn't look like it's being put on any... Oh, wait, hold on. Attributes per type. No, there it is. You can see the bomb damage resistance being applied. But I don't see it being put onto anything else. Odd. And then fix an issue that caused Sovereignty Hub fuel base status to be displayed incorrectly. Sure. And then incorrect text strings have replaced the Ymir, certain boosters, and Epic Arc mission text. And that is it for the patch notes as of today. So rogue drone fabricators are like the back in the game. That's the big news of the day, of the week. But we do have some other things to talk about. We have the monthly ban report. How many more what? Oh, yeah, never mind. That was the structures. All right, so we did get not just like a post on a random Facebook or on the forums. We did get a proper dev blog this week or this month, so we're going to look at that. EULA abiding capsuleers. At the beginning of the year, Team Security began publishing monthly ban reports via social media. Thanks to the feedback from these posts, we've decided to produce a more detailed monthly ban report for EVE Online. This initial report will be longer than usual to explain some policies and how we issue bans. In the future, we hope the report will be briefer in its text, but perhaps more expansive in its data. The report will include statistics on Team Security's policing actions and viewpoints on current trends. Without further ado, here is the monthly ban report for June 2026. You linked the math test. Excellent. Hold on. We'll look at this real quick. Mass tests. What is it? As part of an update to our code base, we're deploying a new Python 2.7 to EVE. Oh. Okay. You can read more about this process in an upcoming EVE Evolved dev blog. Because this is a large project, we'll be periodically opening up Singularity to players so that we'll test multiple systems in a simulation. In a situation that simulates live environments. This is our first of these tests running through the weekend. In terms of what you have to do to help, it's easy. Unlike more traditional mass tests, we are not looking for concentrated mass of pilots at any given time. Just log into Singularity at your leisure and do stuff. Be mindful that test server rules still apply, so you can't just attack anybody freely. So if you break the rules on the test server, you can have action be taken on your account on the main server. So you can't interfere with the work of CCP staff or volunteers. You can only do combat by consent. The various other rules. Forbidden from taking actions that affect the server stability. Selling items on the test server for ISK on TQ is not allowed. No politics on test server. And all of the normal rules apply as well. There's also some other additional rules for special systems, etc., etc. Just, don't be a dick and go test your little things. That's fine. So you can change the server from Tranquility to Singularity in the launcher. There are guides for how to do that. It just looks like you need to just go around and play on it. So it's just the test server gets to be open this weekend until the 27th of July. Now, they have done some of these tests recently. They're obviously testing some pretty significant changes, but the fun thing about significant changes, especially changes like this, the goal of a change like this as a software developer, right? Okay, we're converting over to Python 2.7, right? So what are you really testing is everything exactly the same? Your goal when making this kind of an upgrade is to make it so that everything looks exactly the same. It should not be noticeable. There should not be any. If there is a noticeable difference, it should be positive. You should be like, oh, my frame rates are higher or something like that. Like that. I'm not saying it will be, but I'm just saying, like, when you do a major engine update like this, the goal is what's called feature parity. All you want to do is have it run just as smooth and stable as it did before, but now with your new updated version of Python. And so just go in there and test whatever the hell you want. Try Rogue Drone Fabricators. This is your opportunity to finally test that Abyssal fit that you've wanted to check out. Whatever you want to do, just get in there and see what happens and give FC some telemetry to work with. All right. But back to the monthly ban report. Okay, so here are the different kinds of offenses. We've talked about these every time we've covered these, but I'm glad that they're giving us their definition of these things because it has been kind of confusing up until now. So we often see hundreds of thousands of EVE Online accounts created over a very short time with indicators that they were created through automation. The vast majority of these accounts are permanently suspended before they can even log into the game. So automated account creation involves using automated tools in order to automate the process of creating new accounts. Now, this is often part of a broader thing like botting or spamming or whatever. But if you can kill it in its crib, then even better. Macro use bans are any offense involving automated software that violates the EULA. This ranges from software specialized to automate game content to input broadcasting and the automated spamming of chat messages. So anytime, one button, one action. So if you automate your process of first I do this, then this, then this, that's not allowed. If you have a full-on bot, that's not allowed. If you have a thing that like every 15 minutes posts in a video, posts in a channel, that's not allowed. Those are all not allowed. You have one thing where if you hit one button, it does it across 10 different accounts. That's not allowed. As much as people like to claim that it's happening and FC's allowing it, it's not allowed. ISK selling. This is the selling of ISK, Plex, ships, modules, or anything else like that within the game that violates the EULA, commonly known as real money transactions. Everything within the game belongs to FC first and foremost, and therefore any amount of trading of anything within the game for real-life money is against the rules and will get you banned. Account hacking, ownership disputes. This covers accounts that we detect have been accessed by third party, typically to strip the account of assets so that they can be sold through RMT. It also includes accounts in which 2 or more players claim ownership. This is another one of those things that a lot of people don't think about, but is true. Like, you're not allowed to share your account. You're not allowed to give it to your friend. And what's worse is that realize that, like, when you log into a server, when you connect to anywhere online, you're telling them information about yourself too. So, you know, if you log in consistently and your friend logs in consistently and they're seeing that this account is consistently being logged in from, you know, the West Coast and the East Coast of, you know, of America or whatever, and then like also, okay, so for this 12 hours it's from this location, and then from this 12 hours it's from this location, they might accuse you of account sharing, you know, whatever. Alternatively, as I've said many times, this is why you want to have two-factor authentication, because over time it becomes more valuable to just hack people's accounts and strip them for parts than it does to, say, bot and grind ISK or ISK selling or whatever. So always secure your accounts, otherwise it's a giant mess for everybody involved. Payment disputes, typically in accounts that have been issued chargebacks or purchases. Yeah, so you might think you're clever charging back FC for your purchase. It's a good way to get your account banned. So take a deep breath, look in the mirror, and decide exactly how angry you are at EVE Online before you try to do a chargeback. And if you do need to do one, you might want to be communicating and coordinating with FC's community team before you do it, so that way you don't get in even bigger of a, you know, big trouble. But just realize that, like, anytime you're doing a chargeback, the chances that your account gets acted against is pretty high. ISK buying includes the purchasing of ISK, Plex, ships, or modules that violates the EULA. In these cases, we'll remove the value of ISK from the items and the items that were bought. This often means that the buyer will be left with a wallet in negative balance. Okay, great. So now we can see actions banned by offense. So automated account creation 6,278. Obviously, this is going to be a big one because the number of it is part of the whole puzzle, right? Like, the whole point of this is that they're making an almost unlimited amount of accounts. And so the process of banning those accounts as they're created could go unlimitedly, right? So of course that number is going to be the highest of all of them. Macro use. This has 3,165 permanent bans and 235 temporary bans. I don't remember exactly what the rules behind these are. I think most of these people would be getting temporary bans first. So getting a permanent ban for macro use seems pretty like it would be a bigger deal. Most people would get the macro use or the temporary ban, I assume. But obviously the numbers here show that over 10 times as many accounts have been banned for macro use on that side. Now, as I've mentioned before, that does also include things like gold sellers, right? So the people that just spam rookie chat with like Russian links to buy ISK, those are considered macro use as far as I know. And therefore that probably could overinflate how many permanent account suspensions there are. Because if somebody gets caught using a macro to, say, bot in their VNI, that might be a temporary ban because they're at least playing the game and hopefully will learn their lesson. But the guy that's just creating accounts to go spam the rookie chat, those accounts aren't ever going to have a valid purpose behind them. So it's probably just better to permanently ban them as well. But again, I'm kind of speculating in that. But this also plays into the ISK selling versus ISK buying thing, where we have 2,000 people being banned or characters being banned for ISK selling, while only 35 being banned for ISK buying, with 46 temporary bans. And the reason why that is because the act of advertising, the act of selling the stuff, the network behind the selling of ISK is often bigger than the number of people that are buying the stuff. And so, yes, that number is going to be bigger as well. Hacking disputes and ownership disputes, 270. So relatively low all considered, but this is in a month. So that's almost 10 accounts per day being hacked or players disputing the ownership of the account. That's, so, I mean, it's not nothing. Payment disputes, 60 people decided to charge back against FC, and they no longer have accounts because of it. And then, as I said, 35 temporary bans with 46 permanent bans for ISK buying. It's the only one where the temporary bans outnumber the permanent bans, because as they mentioned, people that are buying ISK, they usually just punish them by retracting it, which leaves them kind of in a lurch, but often is not a first, it is not a bannable, permanent bannable offense first action. Now, it's worth noting that this can have ramifications later on. I've known people that wanted to run for CSM but couldn't because their account had an ISK buying issue early days. Do not buy ISK. It's a terrible thing to do. There are plenty of good ways of doing it by buying Plex and selling it on the market. Don't buy ISK from third-party sellers. Have they started banning the rookie spammers? That was so annoying. I mean, they do. They always ban the rookie spammers but as you can see in this column, as soon as you ban them, they can just respin up another character and then put in a new one, right? You don't just ban the rookie spammers and be done with it. That is an ongoing, constant, 24/7 operation. Points to consider. When an offense, i.e. botting, is committed, we ban all of the accounts associated with the players, not just the account committing the offense. Therefore, one account is used for botting. It can result in many accounts being banned. This means even though we may ban 3,165 accounts for macro use, botting, not all of those accounts were actively botting. So yeah, remember, if you get caught botting, it can take action across all of your accounts. And there's lots of cool ways for FC to know how connected your accounts are. So yeah, that would be the other reason why that number is so big. That doesn't mean that there's 3,000 people botting this month. Although, honestly, I mean, sure. It takes a minute to get them. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that, they have to do the action, and then they can get banned. So if you're just sitting in rookie chat, you're always going to see somebody spamming for goal or for ISK or whatever, or ISK selling, because that's the event that is triggering the autoimmune defense to get them banned. But they first have to post it. And so then the time in between the posting is just the amount of time it takes to set up a new account to be able to get back into rookie chat. If there's a lot of accounts sharing the same invite link, wouldn't the thing to do be ban the parent account? Not necessarily, because a bunch of people, I share around a bunch of people's, the act of using buddy links is not the problem. And so the person spamming their buddy link around isn't themselves you can spam your buddy link as much as you want, just not in the rookie chat channel. As long as you do it yourself. Most of the spam in there is the invite link. I actually don't see that much of the invite link stuff. Most of the time I see ISK selling to .ru web domains. Posting your invite link in rookie chat is a rule against rookie chat, not against the game. So if you post your invite link into rookie chat, you'll get banned from rookie chat, but probably not from your account suspended overall. NPC rookie corpse, there's no rules against it there. You can post your referral link there as much as you want, as long as you're not using macros to do so. Yeah, banning players based on buddy link would allow you to attack another player. If you knew that player's buddy link, you could use their buddy link in order to implicate them in something, which would be bad. So it would be the act of spamming it that could be problematic. But again, there's no rule against spamming your buddy link wherever you go, as long as you are manually doing it yourself. Some accounts are permanently banned for the first offense in ISK selling, whereas others receive a temporary ban for first offense macro use. Ultimately, the length of the ban is at our discretion, and we can change our policies depending on trends and circumstances. Okay, so it's really damaging, though. So much spam, and it looks like ISK selling to a new player. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole thing to talk about when it comes to buddy code links. But that's a whole topic. But again, like, it's not against the rules, so it wouldn't apply to anything involving here. Nobody in this, unless they're using a macro to post it, would apply to this post. It destroys the conversation in this channel. I mean, I can agree that it's probably a problem, for sure. I do wish that there should be ways... You can set up word filters. So you could filter anytime that anybody posts the core buddy link, it just doesn't show you that post. You could do that if you wanted to. But obviously that doesn't help the fact that it disrupts the conversation. FC would have to make a rule for what is allowed within NPC Corp's chat, which currently they don't do, nor do they have anybody policing it if they did. All right. One of the biggest issues in reporting bans is ensuring we issue the correct type of ban. It can be difficult as a single offense could span multiple EULA violations. For example, someone is using an automation to spam chat messages that promote RMT. Do we issue a ban for macro use or ISK selling? And that was exactly what we were talking about, where it's like, I don't know how these play out. So I assume that there would... So ISK selling would be macro use for ISK selling, and then macro use would be macro use that isn't ISK selling. Maybe. Our ban reporting system was structured for internal reports. Now that we're being more transparent about our ban numbers, we team security need to consider making the ban types more granular, provide more accurate insights. We know players want more granular insights, such as how many macro use bans were for input broadcasting. Yeah, that would be pretty good. Bans by alliance. This has been made public in the past and is often requested in the comments associated with our social media posts. It's not something that we will be publishing for the simple reason that we don't care what alliance or corporation a player belongs to. If they violate the EULA, they get punished no matter what colors they fly under. This is a very big, like, something that the players look for thing, right? But really, if you think about it, all they're really doing is trying to get fuel for their own politicking, right? The only reason why a lot of players are asking for the ban report by alliance is so that they can shame alliances. Now, maybe that could be valuable in some way, which is why I think it's fun that every once in a while FC does report things like that at places like FanFest or whatever. But I agree that, like, having that be part of the monthly report would feel very FC's fingers in the sandbox-ish. And, like, individual, it's bad enough that with the monthly economic report we can look at specific regions and be like, oh, that region is this alliance, this region is this alliance. That's already a lot of information. And so I think that while it's understandable why we as players would want that information from FC, is like voice from God letting us know who the bad actors are, there's a certain fun that comes from the open accusations against each other and the propaganda and politics that come from that, that an absolute report might, if not get in the way of, certainly shape in a way that FC might not be comfortable with. Jamaican me crazy. Hey man, I haven't seen you in a while, dude. They should ban accounts and block all IPs associated with them from creating new accounts, IMHO. The problem with IP bans is that IPs change a lot, right? So, like, an IP ban isn't necessarily that great of a solution. Also, multiple players might be coming from the same IP, potentially. It gets ugly. But it could very well be that they, I mean, like, you realize that they are banning a bunch of accounts that are automatically created before they even get to log in for the first time. So there's a certain amount of, like, they don't need to IP ban. There's a certain amount of them that's just going to get banned by the, if you get too fast, if you get too like, if you streamline your process too much of making your new accounts, then they just start dying on before they even get to do anything. They could use MAC addresses and hardware fingerprinting. That does fall into some European laws as a concern with MAC address tracking. It's easier to just put a cookie on a person's computer, not even a cookie, but just like a little piece of your install that allows you to know what computer it's tied to, just like add a GUID to it. Not sure whether or not they do that at all, but I've made software before that did exactly that for things like Android or whatever, where like in order to track that particular installation, we would create a GUID at that installation and it would register that, and then that would allow me to track that particular installation no matter what. And if you uninstalled it and reinstalled it, you would get a new GUID and be a new thing, potentially. But then of course you can also, as I said, you could track the hardware, you could save it in a way that doesn't get deleted, blah, 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 blah. It's a whole thing. Cybersecurity is a tough thing, as it turns out. All right, we hope that you enjoy these reports. Let us know if there's anything else that you would like to see. And so we can see average accounts per day of days when banned. So the vast majority of players get banned within the first 2 days, and it trails off. What's interesting is that you would expect like a curve, but what we see here is that there's two different ways that they ban accounts, right? There's the things that happen right away that let them immediately hold on. Huh. Weird. Hold on. I don't know if I can get rid of that little spot. That's unfortunate. Either way, so where was I? I got distracted. So a lot of accounts get banned within that first little moment, right? Which is weird because so this is low, but it's also like this entire thing isn't even 6,000. Oh, this is macro use only. Okay, got it. So the ones that get banned before they even create themselves wouldn't be on this list. But the point is that like, so the vast majority of people get caught within the first couple of days, the system there. But the issue with macro use, with things like, you know, faction warfare or, you know, the normal botting, is that they like to go after like networks of bots, right? As more and more people use a bot, then the fingerprint of that bot becomes detectable and suddenly you can grab the entire network. But that takes some time for that to be reflected. And often like a police trying to hunt down drug dealers, they're going to wait to see what else they can get. And so we see that like there is some people that get caught in the first day or two, probably stuff like spamming in channels and stuff like that. But then there's other people that get caught, or there's another process that basically catches people within 1 to 3 months. And then there's, of course, some people that get caught that have been around for a very long time, maybe that they've just now started botting on their account. But you can see that they kind of clearly do have two different processes for how to get people banned for macro use. One that is pretty immediate and catches people that are very early, and then one that seems to go like later on. You would expect there to be a curve, but you don't. You see these discrete moments in a lifeline or in a player's life cycle in which these hit. Skill points based on macro use in millions. And so this is actually really interesting too, because what I find fascinating about this is that this extra hump at the end is not reflected here. So what that means is that these characters are old, but they're not constantly played. These are people that left for a while and then came back. And that's why their skill points are low, but their account age is high. And so we see a much more normal, this is kind of the distribution I would have expected, with like it's centered in this case around 1 to 2 million skill points, which is, you know, roughly, really basically people who have used the buddy code, right? So this is newer accounts that have used the buddy code, But then above that, you see this nice trickle off, where the more skill points you have, the less likely you are to be banned from macro use, which makes sense if players are coming back into the game and then just like throwing on a macro in order to catch up or whatever. As far as I know, there's the same thing about a university dorm being unable to connect after someone and it got banned years ago. Yeah, like that can happen, because remember, the whole entire point of a network is to make it so that outside of the network, the elements within the network are hidden, right? So the entire everybody within the same network would appear to be the same thing. And then, like I said, a home address IP, the public IP address for it changes basically every time you reset the router, if not more frequently than that. So unless you're paying for a static IP, there's nothing to really ban, which most people aren't. This one is the one that gets me the most curious, and I'm interested to hear what people think about this picture more than all of the rest, because I want to understand why MOAs are being used more than anything else combined for macro use. What is happening? What is causing? Somebody's got to know. There's got to be an obvious solution to this. With it being this, is it just home fronts? Which home front do the MOAs do? Because I saw the Osprey and the Miasmos, and I immediately thought of home fronts for those. Those are obviously home fronts. Which home front is the MOA used in? No, but like which one? Is it? Because it's not the cap recharger. It's not like why a MOA? Why do the MOAs become the tool? Normally you would expect drone ships. So like the Vexor and the Ishtar. I do find it very interesting that the Vexor and the Ishtar are the same. The thing about, okay, mining, I think. The mining in the MOA? Why wouldn't it be a venture? Botters are so weird. A MOA miner mines more than a venture. All right, we're all learning things today. Okay, so fair enough, I guess. That's so weird to me. Okay. Well, you're under attack in the mining home front? Yeah, but you could still do it. Well, we do it with ventures and a scythe. Or yeah, scythe. Interesting. Well, yeah, but a rope can't get into the home front. So yeah, I guess the MOA would be like the correct answer for mining. You'd have to jettison the rock the whole time, right? That's such a weird setup. I'm going to have to look into that more. The Punisher, I feel, is likely connected to faction warfare. I would have actually expected to see more coercers. It could be home fronts. It could also be Abyss for Punishers. The Miasmos is almost certainly home fronts. The Ospreys is almost certainly home fronts. Like I said, the Vexor Ishtar is actually interesting because you would expect the Ishtar to be higher because it's used in ratting. But here's the thing about Vexors and Ishtars when it comes to ratting, which is that, like, you don't need to bottom. If you're going to be ratting in an Ishtar, you just need to interact with your computer like once every 10 minutes or whatever, or like however many minutes it takes to do the site. You just warp to the site, orbit the thing, launch your drones, turn on your prop, and then come back in 10 minutes. So like, you don't need to bot those kind with an Ishtar. Furthermore, because of the way that Ishtar flies, it will likely be significantly more difficult to detect somebody macroing versus not. A MOA is doing a lot of different things, and therefore it's more actions for it to be precise about, and weird that a human is acting that way. When it comes to an Ishtar, a person like that has gotten themselves like locked in when it comes to Ishtar ratting versus a bot looks mechanically identical, which is why during like scarcity and stuff, they had to actually shake up what the botters were doing by like making ratting dangerous with blackout, and then watch what the people did to switch, because it was in the act of switching. Because remember, if everybody's using the same bots, they're going to all kind of behave the same way. So while normal people scattered to all different kinds of different tasks when they switched, botters all switched in mass from one task to another, and that's what got them caught during that time. So it doesn't surprise me, actually, in the end, that Ishtars are relatively low in all this, because, as I said, you kind of don't need to bot them. They kind of fly themselves. Gilas, probably Abyss. Again, Gilas are probably easier because, like, there's a little bit more flying in the Abyss, but, like, sure, I guess. People that need 5 minutes to descan someone in null claim that every Ishtar pilot is a bot. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Like, the whole, like, run and hide aspect of the bot might be real, but at the same time, like, as long as someone's passively paying attention, again, the problem is that it's just too easy for a human and a bot to both be exactly the same behavior when it comes to Ishtars. You also need a higher SP for Ishtar. That's true, but my point is that if that's the go-to for botting, then, you know, if everybody's botting in anomalies, you know, ratting, then you would expect a high number of Ishtars. But to the SP point, what you don't see on here is Myrmidons, right? Which Myrmidons would be the alpha equivalent of Ishtars. I don't actually know how much those get used now, but I remember, like, when VNIs got stopped as being, like, the de facto awesome ratter, a lot of people switched to Myrmidons. It could very well be that that's what the Vexers are, but I think the Vexers are probably closer to Homefronts again. Same reason why you can't really catch mining bots, because mining has an APM of like 2. Yeah, for sure, for sure. I was mission running in a curse for a month or 2 ago, and I did see a good amount of Vexer bots and belts that would just let you kill them. Oh my god. Wait, Vexer bots and belts? Why? Sure, whatever. Um... 40 alligators. Not sure what the alligators are for. If this was June, what was happening in June? Maybe people are using alligators and ratting. What are you using an alligator in if you're botting? That's what I want to know. Cormorants, there's lots of things that cormorants could be doing with botting. I choose to believe they're all doing Pochfin standings gaining. And herons, heron botting would be wild. Maybe I'm going to just bet that a lot of the herons were in herons incidentally. They got banned for macro use in, like, chats or whatever, and they just happened to be in a heron because that's, like, a newbie ship. Alligator is the premier high-sec site blitzer? Okay. But, like, are you botting that? Maybe. L4s? Could be. Same thing a Gila would do, except for an alligator can't do the Abyss, and I wrote off the Gila as being Abyss runners. I could see 40 Gilas running, like, exotic Abyss AFK, basically. But I wonder if they're, like, are the bots literally, like, running around hunting for individual sites? Because that, I guess, sure, why not? All right. Either way, and then in-game botting reporting tool and enforcement. I mean, Gris is 4 of 10, still have good loot. Yeah, but, like, are you botting that? Are you botting the scanning process? Do you scan down the sites and then run? Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, what is happening? When does the player turn on the bot? Does the bot also find the sites? Or do they have to go, like, run around and, like, scan down sites and then they, like, bot it at the S? And even then, why would you bot it with the alligator? You can just do it. You run refugees and dens for 4 of 10s, and that gets done by botting. Like, the bot moves between systems looking for dens and escalations. I mean, sure, why not? That's so weird though. It feels like a good way to get caught. I mean, yeah, I see Gilas and alligators doing anoms all the time. I can't believe that people are actually botting anoms in HiSec. All right. bot reports received, they received 20,000 bot reports with 10,000 characters reported. So basically every bot that's reported is reported, or each character is reported on average twice, and by 3,000 people. So on average, each person reports 3 people, and on average, those people, 2 people report any given person. That's how the numbers work, I think. And then 3,165 people accounts permanently banned from macro use. Does that match up here? Yes. So of the reports, a third of them are acted against with a permanent ban. But only a third of the banned accounts are accounts that were reported. So, okay. So on average, each person who's reporting bots is reporting 3 people. On average, any bot or any character that's reported is reported twice. On average, 1/3 of the people who get reported get banned, but that's actually not correct, because only a third of the people who are banned were reported first. 2/3 of them were banned without being reported. So that group has a 2/3 miss rate, even though they're okay. And then 36% banned accounts reported. It's so interesting how much 1/3 applies up and down, like in all these different angles, right? Even angles that are not necessarily seeming to be representative of each other, like the number of people versus the number of banned accounts, but also how accurate those people are. It's interesting. I feel like there's a lot to say about this, but also don't want to read too much into the first report. More like right. Well, yes. So if you look at it, it's actually 1/9 because it's like across 2 different things, but it's not the reason why I didn't actually say it that way is because that assumes that all these ratios are the same populations, right? I could probably figure out a better way of putting it, but these numbers are very, very interesting to me. And then a total of almost 2 trillion ISK was removed from the game due to RMT, which is pretty crazy, actually. Like, hold on, now that we've done that, hold on, let me go look at the latest. Isn't there an MER? Oh, today's the last day for the Harada Oki skin and Flex sale. So if you want that, you got to get it today. So this one, it still went up quite a bit, even though, so, well, I mean, I guess at this scale, right? Because this is 2.8 quadrillion. So 2 trillion ISK being pulled out of this system isn't overly notable. Although we can say, yeah, actually, that's probably worth that's a good ratio to look at. Hold on. So yeah, 2 trillion ISK removed from the game through RMT. And that sounds spooky, but then also 58 trillion ISK added to the game through bounties alone. So it only accounts for, like, again, a third, right? Not a third, but like 3%? Either way, whatever. The reporters are right, and about 1 in 9 people. We think that, but we're also working with averages. It could very well be that, like, 1 character is being reported, like, there are some characters that are being reported by like 10 people, and those happen to be the ones that are correct, sorry. And then there's a bunch of people that are being reported by like 1 person here and there that are skewing our averages. So that's why I was saying, like, it's fun to kind of look at these ratios, but when you talk about like the reality of it, of like, oh yeah, this many of the reports are this, it actually, like, it's too little information for us to come to those conclusions. 7th Heaven 07 was wild yesterday. I don't know what happened yesterday. Wait, with the fabricators? It's also where Plex comes from, that gets handed out from bountiful accounts. Yep. So this is the reason why they can now basically give away Plex and other stuff kind of freely now, because effectively as they take things from the system, that gives them a pool to draw from when it comes to offering out like rewards for things like, you know, like Plex in event rewards or like GM caravans, etc., etc. Yep. All right, and that is the ban report. Next, Alliance Tournament 22 rules and regulations. We looked at this the other day, or last week. We now have the actual, some more details. So the Cenotaph, Odysseus, Pioneer, Pioneer Consortium, Venture Consortium, and Outrider will not be allowed in the tournament. However, all of the new destroyers will be. The hybrid drones are not allowed in the tournament. Amar ships, is this anything? All this stuff is kind of what we already knew. We talked about all this last week. Registration is 4,000 Plex. Fill out the form. You can have mercenaries. All kind of the same. Do they have anything? Is there anything new in here that's worth pulling out? I think all the new stuff was covered last time. Due to the damage over time aspects of Deathless Breacher Pods, upon completion of match, all ships will be repaired. All match participants are required to cease combat. Interesting. So yeah, well, if you have a Breacher Pod and the fight ends, then your ship will be saved. That's handy. Teams may field a maximum number of 1 logistics cruiser, 1 T1 support cruiser, or 2 T1, T2 support logistics support frigates per match. Praxis, Gnosis, Synesis, and Metamorphosis are the only special edition ships that are banned, or that are not banned, rather. So all of these other ones are banned, including the faction, the AT ships. They mentioned that they were going to allow AT ships. That makes me sad and angry. What is this? Ah, that's cool. Yeah, it's a good display of the actual map. But again, like all of it, so none of this is different. It's just better displayed. All right. All this stuff is either the same as it was before or was part of the previous one, or the previous dev blog about it. Boosters are not allowed. The Balgorn is not allowed to be a flagship. Okay, well, my theories about the Blood Raiders taking over the event is being reduced. I wish that flagships could be AT ships. Also, they should allow the Marshal there. And yeah, all this stuff is pretty much the same. I think there's some new rules about banning, but we'll probably look at that more when it's closer to the actual show. And this is the rules of the series. Collusion rules, that's There's a reason why these rules need to exist now. That's it. All right. The AT stuff is coming. There's more rules about that. They probably figured it would be too much of an advantage for previous winners if they allowed AT ships. Yeah, I mean, that is the exact reason why they've said in the past why they don't allow it. I continue to say that that's no fun and that they should allow it anyways. They did suggest that they were interested in having them be a component of this AT, but apparently not. One in the Skittles was that skin? Which one? Not that one. That one? That one's a good one. I love Belgorns too. AT ships cannot participate to avoid positive feedback loops of farming more AT ships. Perfect sense, FC. Perfect sense. I mean, maybe. Although, again, like, I've always loved the fact that, like, the introduction of an AT ship into the fight changes the fight completely. Because it allows the person... Because usually the people that have the AT ship is already, like, the more baller fleet group, right? Like, they've clearly won ATs before, or paid a shit ton of money for this, but they're putting that on the line. So, like, if you're fighting the Tuskers, if you get paired up with the Tuskers, you're not really going into that thinking that you're probably going to dunk them, right? Like, you might pull out a victory, you hope to pull out a victory, but, like, you're fighting the Tuskers. But if the Tuskers field an Atana, well, hey, I may not be able to win against the Tuskers, but I could, if I throw everything I possibly can at it, I might be able to kill that Atana. And I love the idea that it creates this, like, side objective in certain fights. Although, again, that's my personal thing. That's me as a tournament enjoyer, as opposed to a tournament participant's attitudes about it. So if they feel differently, then I respect that. But they did mention something about it, so it makes me sad that it doesn't look like it's going to be a thing. It looks like it's the tiger stripes with different colors put onto it. That's a crazy skin. All right. Now then, the last big topic of the day. Well, we've got two big topics of the day. Two more videos to cover. One is the Okama Tea Time, and the other is the Vanguard video. I do have the Frontier Friday video, but I skimmed through it. They do make an update every Friday. It would be worth going back and getting an update of how Frontiers is going. But I skimmed through this video, this Frontier Friday, and it didn't feel like a good, like, hey, let's check in on them video. So I'll figure out a bigger thing at another time. But we do have these two to prepare to go against. So we're going to go with Force Projection and Celebrix Capacitor update. So again, kind of like the AT one, this is another one where it's like, we got a lot of this information last week, but now we have a lot more details about it, and we have the Okami Tea Time about it. So we're going to watch this video and look at these numbers a little bit. I'm going to just start the video for now, and then anytime when we need to, I'm going to stop and look at the raw information, because they did provide a lot of the information in there. So let's jump into it.
Hello everyone, I am FC Swift, joined by FC Okami to talk about force projection.
Hell yeah.
Okami, you released a force projection blog later last week.
Yeah, on Friday.
Yeah, right. A huge topic. Community were super interested in it, so we wanted to just chat about it a little bit more and maybe get into some more of the details that we weren't able to cover in that blog.
Sure.
I just realized that this is in this window, which is going to be a problem. So I'm just going to skip over to this YouTube video, or this YouTube channel, or like the actual YouTube video. That way I can kind of jump between these. Fine. Also, we're going to switch this to 1.25. And we're going to thumbs up the video, because we love thumbs upping videos that we like, guys, including this one down below.
I am FC Swift, joined by FC Okami to talk about force projection.
Hell yeah.
Okami, you released a force projection blog later last week.
Yeah, on Friday.
Yeah, a huge topic. Community were super interested in it, so we wanted to just chat about it a little bit more and maybe get into some more of the details that we weren't able to cover in that blog.
Sure, I heard people needed something to talk about, so here we go.
I will say, I am actually, the more I think about, the more I talk about these changes. I say this as I'm not a null secker, but I think that this low key has a really good chance of being very healthy for the game overall. This idea of like the big alliances and the mega alliances and the mega coalitions. People are complaining about people like flocking into specific alliances, but this change is the kind of change that could fundamentally alter how we structure ourselves within the game and social groups in such a way that like coalitions are at the very least going to be a lot less steady than they are now. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, just the largest topic that has been like plaguing, I guess is the best word to say it, player groups for 4 or 5 years, probably much longer, but like really they've been feeling the pressure for a couple of years now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's been a topic since I've been here. So I've been here for about 2.5 years now. And I know over the course of like many CSMs during that time, I think I've seen 3 groups now. And it's just been one of the top major topics that just keeps coming up and keeps coming up and keeps coming up. So I'm really...
Hot take. Most of nullsec's complaints are just them asking FC to do their own job for them. Complaining about... It's your empire. Build it. And so like if they complain about it to FC and they get changes made to their advantage, it just makes it so it's less work for them. That's my hot take. The nullsecers are never going to be happy with it because that's their way of encouraging FC to give them more things. Give me more things.
really happy to start doing something about it. Yeah, do you want to jump into some of the details of it? Should we talk through that?
Yeah, let's actually just start. Let's just recap a little bit what it is in case people were living under a rock this summer, going outside, touching grass, doing that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what the force projection changes are kind of like.
Yeah, so first of all, like I want to share that we're aware there's like a number of ways to project force in Eve, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's absolutely a number of ways, and I think that
Again, like, we'll stop allying people. Well, I have to because my enemy does. The whole thing is about attempting to inflict problems on your enemy that you yourself can deal with, right? So that's why I think that the idea of like making what these jump changes really do is make space bigger again, right? It makes farther away actually farther away, which is almost certainly a good thing. We'll see how I feel about this in a year.
we just kind of had to pick one to start with. And the biggest one that we picked is sort of projection, long-range projection using Ansiblex gates. So at FanFest, we announced that we had some alignment around an idea that used jump fatigue.
Yeah.
And that was true at the time, but we've meandered and we've shifted since then. And so the proposal that we have and that I put out in front of the community and what we're working towards is basically that all Ansiblex gates now have a capacitor. They've already had this, actually. This is a thing that exists that we just haven't used on a lot of structures. And so what will happen now is when ships jump through them, they will use some of that capacitor, and that capacitor is basically just power like it is on a ship. And when it's empty, you can't jump through that anymore. So you need to be really strategic about which ships you jump through, how far you're jumping them as well. So range from your SOV capital is also an important factor.
Yeah, that's the huge kind of
It will be fine. We'll make tutorials for null bears how to warp to gate and activate it. Well, I mean, it doesn't change the act of using the Incilivix.
another bit of a new wrinkle to it, right? It's not right now, for those that haven't taken an Ansiblex for a while, you can just, as long as you own the space and you're able to install the upgrade and you fuel it, you can just jump from Ansiblex to Ansiblex to Ansiblex as long as your Empire spans with no fatigue, really no drawbacks. Just as long as some guy keeps putting the fuel in there, then you're good to go.
Yeah, and it's fairly unrestrained right now. Like, there are some constraints, like you said, fueling and setting up the network and everything. And like, we recognize that this is a huge part of force projection, and I think it's just the first step of where we want to go. And so we've added a couple other layers here. Some I know are hot topics that we should jam on a little bit, but Alliance only ACLs, that's another big one. So you have to be in the Alliance to use the network.
Yeah, and that's a really big change that people like gravitated towards because these player groups over the years, they've created these not just alliances but groups of alliances, these like coalitions where they like have friends next to them and they all use their jump bridge networks together to project from one area to another. They use like a central market hub.
So there's an important piece to this that I don't think that gets talked about enough, which is the fact that like the alliance only access list is like a big deal. And then people talk about like how, okay, well now two different alliances can't use each other's space in the same way as they did before. But the reason why this is so critical is because of the natural conclusion of what this system does, which is create a proximity to home headquarters as like a main critical piece. So like you'll have the Alliance headquarters, and then it'll radiate out its power from there. And so now, if you know, like the coalition has this whole big block, right? And right now, if you're within that coalition, you can travel all throughout that coalition. It's all the exact same. What they're going to have to do is make it so that each alliance kind of has its own territory, because the further you are from your headquarters, the more everything costs to move around, and you can't move through Ancelibixes of your allies within the alliance. And so, you know, if you could use other groups as Ancelibixes, then you could just put the headquarters strategically around, so that way every Ancelibix is within its home range or whatever. But by putting these two things together, by requiring Ancelibixes to be bound only to the alliance and be based on the distance to the home alliance, it basically makes it so that there's a maximum range of what any given alliance's network can truly and effectively cover. And that can't be augmented by being in a coalition, right? You can't make it so that you have more home territory by having multiple alliances, because each alliance is its own Ancelibix network. Obviously, there's going to be other solutions to this. You could theoretically have networks where it's like you have things outside of your home network potentially, but like, I don't know, man. This makes the enmeshing of coalitions almost impossible. So now coalitions still can work together, but they basically rely on each other for their various territorial control, right? Rather than being fully integrated.
So if I'm part of Winterco or the Imperium or something, I don't have to be in Fraternity or Kuhn Swarm. I can still like travel over to their market, their mini Jita.
Anybody who says FC preventing me from going where I want, I just bring up the fact that Nullsec were also the people that hated Zarzak, so screw you.
Go out, buy my stuff, and go out to my space, not have to worry about anything.
Exactly. And so that, you know, those group sizes, those friends, those coalitions together, right, like, are quite powerful, right?
Yeah.
So
I hate CC now. I can't imagine it's a good thing for non-hearing. Anlex skates is funny, though. No, I agree. I mean, the thing about closed captioning is that, like, and perfect is the enemy of the good, right? Like, for somebody who has difficult time hearing, the fact that it is 90% correct is good. The fact that FC didn't have to do the closed captioning, it was just done by Google, is good. The fact that Google doesn't know what an Ancelibix gate is pretty practical. And I think that most people that use closed captionings would see that and be like, not think that they're talking about skis or skates.
So that's one of the first layers we want to tackle with this change, is just can we create some restrictions around how these gate networks are used by players, and also see, like, this is a new puzzle. So another way that I think about this is, like, this kind of became a solved thing in EVE. Everyone knew how to work with it. And I think that
the thing I keep on coming back to, though, is that this isn't about how Ancelibixes work. This is about how alliances and coalitions organize themselves as far as physical space and territory. That's the actual goal, is to change that. The Ancelibix jump gate system changes is just like the method to enact that change.
I love how smart our players are, and I love watching them solve new puzzles. And I think it's just time for a new puzzle here. Something that, you know, as I put this blog out, people are speculating, will it be like this or will it be like that? And I bet you people are already thinking about where they want to put their alliance, soft capital and things like that. Yeah. And I think that's EVE, right? Like, solving these puzzles is EVE. So part of me is just seeing the joy of creating this new puzzle for people to solve.
Yeah, you brought up the CSM talking about force projection. Going back to my time as a player on CSM 6, which is now a long time ago, I vividly remember force projection was one of the main issues we had at the time. It was a completely different system, one that doesn't exist now. But we were like, hey, you know what? You could just Sino and daisy chain these Sinos and move around the universe.
I have always hated force projection, especially Sinos, especially Titan bridges, like back in like 2018, 2019. Because, like, what happened was everybody was just using Titan bridges for everything, and then they were complaining that roaming didn't do anything. And it's like, well, if everybody uses magical teleportation machines, then yes, you're not going to find anybody by roaming. If nobody is actually physically flying from point A to point B, then you're not going to catch anybody when they're going around. You need to encourage people to actually fly through space. If everybody's magically teleporting, then there's no way for people to be caught. And so this has been a very frustrating thing for me for a long time.
With no drawbacks at all. There was no fatigue even. And like at the time, we were like trying to hammering this home as a problem. But it all goes back to if you leave a system for a certain amount of time, the players are going to solve it. And it's cool to solve the problem, but sitting in that like stagnant solution creates some really unhappy moments for a lot of groups.
Yeah,
like,
I
in
agree.
the long run.
And I think just to lend to that too, I want to talk a little bit about sort of my design philosophy for Eve, which is a few things. So one, like we're going towards
Zoe.
the third decade now, which is amazing. Like I want this game to be alive and fresh forever, and I think that sometimes in order to
Oh no, a part of me just turned to dust. He's right. We are well within the third decade now. I hate it.
do that, you need to just kind of break down these old problems in new ways as well. Like I think that you can't just leave something the way it is forever. And as much as we value the sort of like simulation nature of Eve, sometimes parts of that simulation need to change to keep things healthy. And
There's no such thing as static balance. All balance comes through change. There is no perfect balance to be achieved. The perfect balance comes through the act of continual balancing.
so that's part of my philosophy is like where does this need to change in order to be healthy? And this is definitely an area of that.
Yeah.
And the second thing I talk about a lot.
I will say that also, just for context, no one has ever been happy with Ensyllabix changes. Like, or when Ensyllabix has got introduced, they have been decried as being overpowered since moment one. Now they obviously were born from the POS structure thing, and in a lot of ways, like with the POS structures, they always rolled it out. Like the new version of it was stronger in some way. That was actually kind of a prop, like because the old systems, the old POS systems, were balanced around themselves, and then they like add these carrots to make people happy with the changes. And so the Ensyllabix is much like Rookwalls and even like Athenors and some other pieces were like very, very strong when they came out. And a lot of people have like said that for a long time. So this isn't like some new, it's been solved kind of thing. Ensyllabixes have concerned people since moment one.
But I don't know if I've talked about on the show or before is something called affordance theory in design, which is basically like anything that is designed or anything you interact with has an affordance. It is how you interact with the thing. It's how you use the thing. And a big thing that I see with Eve being such a robust and well-aged game with such a strong player base is there are all these things that exist inside of Eve that are affordances. And this all goes to like internalized biases and things. I'm going to crazy design land here.
I'm all for it.
I love this shit.
But we're all biased, right? And so often what I see is that both some of ourselves as developers and often players can only think being biased by the affordances that they already have, right? So they think in Eve in the constructs of the things that exist inside of the game already. So something like fatigue is an affordance, and it exists inside of Eve, and so everybody naturally gravitates towards trying to solve a problem with something that already exists. And there's there's something good about that sometimes. That's the right solution. But one of the things I'm trying to bring to Eve is like, how can we bring new things to the table? Things that people aren't thinking about. How can we break?
I really like what he's saying there. It makes a lot of sense. It also, like to jump on that though, like this is so true about how we analyze these sorts of things. And I'm sure this is going to happen with Ensyllabix changes too. There's actually this great video that I have. It's one of my most popular videos, which is weird because it's like just this older video when Rookwall changes were first being made. And I talked with a friend of mine who used the Rookwall back in the day and would love to be like the foreman for his group. And he was upset that the changes were being made because he's now going to have to commit his Rookwall into danger. And, it'd be like, well, people can come and rescue you with like the panic button and stuff. And he said, no one's coming to rescue me. Nobody likes the miners. Nobody respects the miners. And like that ends up being the problem with how we evaluate these things, especially before they come out, is that we evaluate things based on how things are now. But we don't really appreciate how the change itself will also change our priorities and change the way that we think about things, right? The Rookwall changes, like the people that had Rookwalls at the time thought that the Rookwall changes were going to be terrible because nobody respects mining. But what it did do was make people respect mining. It changed the way that players thought about mining much more. Like the idea, there used to be players who were very, very proud of the fact that they didn't have any mining skills. Now, a lot of players, most dedicated players, at least accept mining as a task to do sometimes even an exciting task to do in certain ways. And so, like, the people before the changes, the framework that you had to evaluate things could not anticipate, or at least many people did not anticipate, how the changes would actually change the framework in which we gauge things themselves, right? And I think that like Equinox was another one of those ones that was kind of like this, and that this is definitely going to be one of those ones where it's like the changes to the way that power and the connections between people and groups are changing with this are almost unpredictable right now. I'm sure there's plenty of people that are making predictions, and some of them are going to be right just by the definition of it. But anybody who says that they absolutely know how it will play out is just being arrogant, because the details will matter once it all plays out. And by the details, I mean like the individual people making individual decisions to see how it all plays out. And in the end, thinking about it from the way that we think about coalitions and power structures now almost becomes not less useful when it comes to evaluating how things might be later on. Who would have thought when Equinox had happened that part of the changes would be that Goonswarm would leave Delve, right? So something to think about.
Break our biases and think in some new constructs to create things that people haven't even imagined yet, because I think that will also help keep EVE alive for a very long time, is like thinking outside of the box.
That is really cool.
Now rep the real band-aid of the gaping wound that is asset safety, so we can finally stitch that wound. No asset safety for supers and titans. That's it. Just let that happen. That's what you post. I know syllabus changes are going to make people pissed off this year. That's fine. This can be this year's change. Next year, titans and supers, no more asset safety. That's what I'm... Let's go.
Cool. That's a great way to frame it too. I see this in myself so much. As someone who's played EVE for 20 years, I'm like, oh, what if we just do this type of mechanic again? And it's just like a rehash of the same thing we've already done, because I have like certain memories and biases towards it. I'm like, oh, game was good then. Life was good then. Let's just do that again. And like, I have a hard time escaping that EVE box for some of these things. So kind of on that, why not just put fatigue back on Ansiblexes and just wipe our hands and just walk it off and put the mission accomplished banner up on the...
Please address the fact that there is no skills that affect fatigue. Don't say it out loud. Please don't say it out loud.
Yeah.
On some carrier somewhere.
So
allow asset safety for supers and titans. Allow high sec use for all ships as well. Nope. Hate it even more.
Admittedly, I'm not a huge fan of fatigue as a mechanic. I do think it has a role in EVE, but what I didn't like about it being the solution to the specific problem is that it's effectively a debuff that's applied to an individual.
Yeah.
So if you were to jump through an Ansiblex gate and you're just mining or doing your business, we'd apply a debuff to you, right? Like we'd apply some fatigue along the way. And I think that the first part is that can feel bad as an individual, trying to manage that for yourself as you're taking these sort of actions, maybe just doing your day-to-day stuff. And the other thing is at scale, it doesn't work super well. So if you're managing a fleet going through a gate, you might have to manage debuffs across a whole range of individuals in different ships, right? Yeah. And then that becomes much harder to think about when you're trying to plan long-range moves and things like that and be strategic. So that's part of one of the reasons. And then I think when I look at Ansiblex and what they are and how they exist in EVE, they are their structure, right? Like they are part of a network of structures that people build, and effectively a roadway. And I think it's much more interesting for me to move a system onto that point of structure, into a single place where it's managed on that structure, than to put it on the individual. So I think two things have happened that are great as this design was proposed, that I really like, and why I backed this design when it was brought to me, is that we've basically separated like capital ship long-range movement and sort of like network-based movement through Ansiblex gates. And so we have these two systems now that we can kind of balance separately and for different purposes. And I think that's really powerful from a design standpoint as well. So there's a lot of reasons why I think this is just a stronger idea and why I'm excited about it.
Yeah, you definitely, like, his point is very valid, which is like, even if you accept everything about fatigue, mixing subcapital movement and capital level movement, you can do it, but it's messier. It's messier design wise. So I like the idea of keeping those distinct concepts.
I can keep rambling. There's more.
No, this is good. Let's get into the nitty-gritty, not super nitty-gritty, but let's get into it a little bit more because this is something that players are very curious about.
Numbers.
Yeah, we got some numbers, right? So the zoning of this thing, which is now centered around your alliance capital. Previously, like as EVE exists right now, you said it.
So okay. There already are tools to help you visualize this out there. This does definitely mean that there needs to be an update to the map, so that way you can see both in 3D and in 2D you need to be able to see what zone any given system is compared to your capital. So remember, you don't need to check it for any given zone. It doesn't matter for any given zone. The only system that matters in this regard is your home system and the destination system, right? And so, this, we'll get there.
An alliance capital purely to boost your ADM numbers by 2.
Yeah.
That's kind of all it does. You move it around somewhat strategically, but you probably don't think about it too much.
Thanks.
Now it's going to be really where your group's home is, right? Like this is going to be the center of your capital.
Yeah.
And everything from there, from zone 1, which is 0 to 5 light years, is free travel through Ansiblexes.
Yeah.
That's how it works now. So you'll see in a couple of minutes, like the different ships have different values of capacitor usage when they go through an Ansiblex. Another one of these levers that you guys have to balance things a little bit better.
Yeah.
But everything within your immediate zone.
To put things into perspective, I believe that most capital ships can jump 12 light years. I want to say it's 12 light years, right? And so I'm sure Malak or others will correct me in a few seconds if it's wrong. So what that means is that basically zone 1 is about a little bit less than half of a normal capital jump range capabilities. And then, so capitals can jump basically into zone 2 to a little bit into zone, apparently the second zone 2, but zone 3, even though they have it also listed as zone 2. Carriers are 8? Okay.
Zone is free to travel.
Exactly.
Then when we expand on that a little bit is where these things get a little bit more restrictive, as you were talking about. You guys can see the chart. Going into that from 5 to 10, that multiplier goes from 0 to 2, right? So now suddenly things are costing a little bit more to use the bridge. Going beyond that, 6, 9, all the way to 15, which is a huge multiplier to prevent people from really going from like the top of the map to the bottom of the map in just a couple of minutes. So we've got this. Now let's kind of see some of the ship values themselves as well.
Just to like paint the picture here so everybody's aware.
Yeah.
Like you have your capital and then these zones radiate out from your capital, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Every ship is going to have an amount that it costs. Like the bigger the ship is, the more it's going to cost to go jump through the Ansiblex gate, and then that cost is multiplied by the distance of the Ansiblex you're jumping to and how far it is away from the capital, right? So even if you're jumping from zone 2 to zone 5, you'll be paying that times 15 cost. So everybody's.
So hold on. Where is it? Do I have it here? Oh, yeah. So my maximum jump range is 7 light years in a Thanatos. I feel like I should be maximum, right? I should have jump drive. It's jump drive calibration is the only skill, right? I have jump drive calibration 5. Hold on. Galente. Galente carrier. Hold on. Carrier. Oh no, my Galente carrier's 4. Wait, hold on. Does carrier skill increase range? No. No? No. So it's 7? Okay. So yeah, okay. So carriers can't even jump out of zone 2. So interesting. What about a jump freighter? Hold on. Where's my ship tree? A dreadnought will hit 7 light years, and a jump freighter. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I can't fly jump freighters. Oh no! Not on this character. Doesn't matter, it should still be the same though. $10. Okay, great. So jump freighter can jump directly into zone 2. So that's your basically your relative distances, right? So 10 light years is the maximum range of a jump freighter, while 7 is for like the combat ships.
He's aware.
Yeah, that's
Also, so okay, so this is the destination system. Okay, so the reason why I say this is because, like, so is there a maximum range for Ancylobixes broadly? Everyone versus environment is just not fun, not lore justified. All cash grab rep folks and tell people creation and Fenris creation, but overlaps towards destruction. Many people who spent years get things, only lose them for being at work one day. I'm not sure. Well, yeah, I mean, like, you need to have certain protections so that way you can have a real life for sure. But yeah, 10 light years is a lot of goon space. But what was I going to say with this? Oh, yeah. So is there a maximum distance of an Ensil? Because, so if I have a headquarters and then my coalition friend has a headquarters, they could have one system within my area, and then they can have an Ancylobix there that links all the way back to their home. And sure, it's going to cost them a ton of capacitor to jump from their home system to my home system, or, you know, near my home system. But to jump back home is actually going to be free, because the only thing that matters is the destination system. So if you build far-flung stargates, or like Ancylobixes, coming home will always be free, as long as it like is within that zone 1 distance, which is interesting. The cost to use the Ancylobix one direction is not the same as to use it the other direction, because it's not based on the distance between the Ancylobixes. It's based on the destination system's distance from that alliance's home system. So very, very interesting.
It's really good, and that helps contextualize things a lot for players. Now they can start saying, okay, now I can move things around. Now, of course, these are only a couple of examples of the different ships. If we were to get all of the ships in there, we just need a bigger TV or turn this sideways. We don't have time for that. We don't know how to do that here. But these are just like kind of a little bit of an example, an amuse-bouche of the things. Your dev blog will have everything in there.
So the dev blog does have everything in here. We can hop in here and we can see that the total capacity is one what is it, 1,000 terajoules. So 1,250 terajoules, which recharges 200 terajoules every 60 minutes. For a total recharge time of about 6.25 hours. Now, that's the average recharge time. And so the peak recharge time should be closer to 300, with the lowest recharge time being closer to 100. So if you can manage to like hold it at that, 25 to 30% capacitor and at maximum recharge, you could look at maybe 200 terajoules. But we're going to look at 300 terajoules. But we're going to look at the 200 terajoules. And for the costs, and we can see that this is cost. Is this cost in terajoules? Is this cost in terajoules? I assume it is in terajoules. Yes. So if it does 200 terajoules per hour, right? Yeah, 200 terajoules per hour, then that would mean that at maximum ranges, that is less than one attack battle cruiser, or less than one battle cruiser an hour. That's what's got people kind of freaking out. But remember, this is like the maximum range possible that you're talking about. If you're talking about like minimal ranges, you can jump multiple rock walls through a gate within that period of time. If you can use rock walls, which can you? Oh yeah, rock walls are going to be like the one exception, right? Yeah. Which, by the way, jump freighters. Do jump freighters exist on here? No, yep. Jump freighters are here. Okay, great. So jump freighters are here, and they are at the reduced amount. We were looking at that to see whether or not jump freighters would be an exception too. So they are, and they're really low. So that's interesting. But yeah, a lot of the people that are saying doom and gloom are assuming that it's like your final destination is more than 20 light years away, which is big. That's a lot of space. So don't really pay too close of attention of people using that like, oh, it's one battle cruiser an hour. It's not really that. That is at its most extreme.
People can break down. And before we start, like, are these numbers?
Wait, ANSI max range is 5 light years for your information. Oh, okay, great. So you can't just do that like really, really long one all the way home. It's only within 5 light years. So the destination matters, but so that means that so zone 2 can easily jump into zone 1. But by the time you're at zone 3, you can't go from zone 3 to zone 1 in a single Encelopex jump. So basically, your territory's control zone is going to be about 10, is basically zone 3, right? Zone 3 is going to be your periphery. Somebody was asking me, what does this matter to me as like a non-nullsecker? What this is going to mean is that like, if you're towards the periphery of somebody's empire, there's going to be less explorers, there's going to be less ratters, there's going to be less of everything, because they're going to like not want to be towards their periphery. They're going to, your alliances are going to be encouraged to be as tight to their home system as possible. So there might be some like auxiliary stuff happening in the edge systems, but you know, if you're out there doing exploration or something like that, chances are the reaction time is going to be significantly slower and more anemic towards the frontiers than towards the center, and that's going to be a big thing for people doing that kind of stuff, and like especially harassing places where people put mercenary dens, etc., etc. Yeah.
Final, no changes. Shipping them, whether people like it or not.
Look, nothing's final till it's out the door.
Like, say somebody goes to explore space and they fly out into unknown region without daisy chaining, warpable return buoys, perma-sinos, which to come on a timer. There's no way to get back. Yeah, well, I mean, it is easier if there is a chain. It's always going to be cheaper to come back than it is to go out, for sure. And I think that a lot of explorers understand that they're going to have to figure out their own way home.
Just to be honest, like these are you know, we feel pretty good about these. We've worked on them internally. I've gone through some feedback rounds with the CSM. I feel pretty good about them. That said, like, nothing's final till it's out there. I'm open to feedback. We're open to feedback. I think, you know, maybe this will shift up or down a little bit here or there, and that's okay.
It also means it's harder for groups to yeet into their peripheries without a drawback. Yeah, exactly. Like, if there is going to be especially a subcapital response to something, like, for instance, an ESS raid, it's going to be a weaker response towards its periphery because, A, there's going to be less people that are willing to do that, and B, the gate itself is not going to allow them to move as many ships at the same time.
Okay, but I think what's great about all of this system is just like all of the levers we now have to tune this is fantastic.
Yeah.
The other thing
Yeah,
just to
that's
mention
true.
is like we are, you know, I think a lot of this is basically derived originally off of ship mass.
Yes.
But we're not using a specific stat like that because it's just going to make it easier for us to tune this system independent of like wormholes or something, for example.
It's also going to create a lot less like knock-on effects. It is less sandboxy, it's less systemic, but it means that things like ships that have particularly low mass or abilities to affect their mass. The one good thing is that if it was based on mass, then every nullsecker group is going to have the wormhole thing where it's like, make sure to turn off your prop mod before you jump through. Yeah, so I can understand them not wanting to do that.
If we needed to change mass to affect this, the whole game would go wonky. So
Yeah.
keeping it separated on purpose.
Yeah, we've seen certain metas develop specifically in wormhole space where like you have to be very cognizant of the mass of your thing. So they're like, oh, like this we can't use these armor
Even my
doctrines
bro.
because it adds too much mass.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
If one guy leaves his MWD on, it just ruins the whole thing. Like I've been that guy. Sorry, fleet that I've been in. But yeah, so not real quick. Let's dwell on this a little bit. The capacitor, the Ansiblexes as we're talking about now, will have 1,250 gigajoules of capacity.
Yep.
And how is that going to work? Like, is it going to work the same as normal ship capacitor works, or is it going to be like a new system?
It works.
You doing AT thing? I mean, we talked about the AT a little bit. Am I going to fly in it? Nobody's asked me to fly in their fleet, or in their team, so I don't plan on it.
Similar to ship capacitor. However, the recharge rate is hourly.
Okay.
So
Yeah, the orca that jumps through not remembering he's set up for wormhole rolling kills the entire gate.
you'll get a chunk of energy back on that capacitor every hour right now. and it is also logarithmic, or
It's also, remember guys, that these gates are set. So like what can jump through any given gate is going to be known, right? These aren't things that you have to figure out in the moment. It's just like this gate is a connection from zone 2 to zone 3. So you have to pay zone 3 costs when going through it. It's going to be like, to the people living in these environments, it's actually going to be pretty simple to keep track of, probably.
is nonlinear. I don't think it's quite logarithmic, but much like the ship capacitor is currently. So there's sort of like a midpoint where it'll be like optimal, and then the
It would be cool because they also talked about like the ability to add in extra bonuses. So maybe if you like add a whole bunch of power and personnel and all your resources from Equinox, you can make a system particularly easier to jump to. So you can have like a staging periphery beachhead system that like can't have any good mining, can't have any good ratting, but can be jumped to from the capital a lot easier.
and will be a little bit slower to.
Although with only 5 light year of distance, I mean, the capital can only ever jump within zone 1 from capital. So it'd have to be like the edge of your capital, and even then you're only barely going into zone 3. I don't know, whatever. We'll see.
Recharge to the full. And I think it's about we're looking at about a 6 to 6.5 hour total recharge time right now for a capacitor from 0 to max.
Okay, cool. So keeping that in mind, 1250 is the max number. So obviously within your home base, within zone 1, the multiplier for all these is 0, right? So the hauler has a cost of 1 to go through a jump bridge. If you're going 0 to 5 light years from your capital, it's still 0. You never have to worry about that. And if you're doing PI 20 light years away, you can send quite a few haulers through this thing, right? And it'll recharge sometime. And then if we like swap over to battleships, go to the other extreme, a battleship within your home area, like maybe it's going to be a home defense, maybe we're just moving things around. Again, cost 0. But if you're trying to project 20 light years to a new front, or there's a cool fight going on in Losec, or a cool fight going on outside of your sphere of influence, you're going to have a hard time sending a battleship fleet pretty much anywhere outside of that 5 light years, right?
Yep.
Like you're talking like 7 quick maths, 7 battleships can make it to zone 5.
Yep.
So you're talking about 20 light years. You're not taking a fleet there. You're not even taking a full battleship fleet of like, if we're talking about 256 ships in there, you're not even taking them to zone 2. You're going to have to do stuff like Titan Bridge, your strategic ops, or conduit jump with a couple of carriers.
Yep.
You're just not going to be able to use the Anzablex network there. And then, of course, there's granularity in between, right? Like Exhumers, pretty easy to go out and go to your next mining fleet. If a phase field is kind of nearby, you can still make it with your Exhumer fleet. If you've got a home defense fleet of assault frigates, like if you've got 50 assault frigates, you can go pretty far with those guys. And
It's going to make it so that defense fleets involving smaller ships actually has some sort of primacy, right? Like there's a reason for your fleets to be running around in like destroyers or even cruisers, because you can bring a bunch more of them
and defend your like immediate home. The further and further out you get, the more scary it gets.
Absolutely.
A little bit. Same with like strategic cruisers and hacks. Like if you're just taking your Ishtar out, you can go far, but a fleet of Ishtars, not going to go very far. Not going to make it really beyond using Anzablexes at least.
Yep. Yeah, I think there's a lot of really interesting things in what you talked about as well around the different sort of like strategic choices that people need to make. Like, are we going to be using our networks for getting out to that phase field today? Like that's a choice and a risk you have to make, right?
Yeah.
Like, if we end up draining a bunch of our Anzablex capacitor and then somebody pounces on us, like, are we going to have enough to defend this area?
That's a fun fact. Yeah, so you could go out there and your fleet to go do the thing and get out there, but then if you get any problems, you've actually drained the capacitors, so like help can't show up as well. That's pretty fun.
Area. And so you have to make those trade-offs and those kinds of choices. And I think that's interesting.
Yeah, it really is. And we're
Up to 16 pilots, how many you need for the drone thing? The drone fabricators, we did it with a fleet of 5. We aren't contesting in the Alliance tournament. Convocation appearance isn't. Am I doing the CSM thing, or going to let the new Eve streamers do interviews and platforms? I have been really wanting to get back into interviewing again more. It's just like with the way that some people feel about me, there's a lot of people that don't necessarily want to be associated. But I would be happy to interview people to chat about stuff and like that. It is something I'm very interested in doing again. I know that there's a lot of people that feel very conflicted about me. So, only can be so mainstream. You take 16-man killer AT fleet, elite AT fleet to do sites. I'm sure you could be practicing while doing AT and wormhole seeking fights. I mean, obviously it's a thing to do together with your fleet to practice, but it's a totally different, it's not going to be anywhere close to scrimming. Wonder if the bowhead counts as a freighter, can move a fleet of them. Yeah, probably. Yeah, you could probably have like a bowhead move a bunch of stuff, and then everybody else kind of like hop into ships when you get on to the other side. We'd have to do the math to figure out which one that they would become, but I assume it would be more efficient. Bowhead has jump fatigue reduction, right? Yeah, it has a 90% reduction in jump fatigue, so it'll probably count and be easier to move around.
You're talking about capacitor, and one thing that we saw pop up are players asking, of like, oh, what if I just park a fax on there and pump capacitor into this thing? I can surely just move everything through. No? Yes?
Well, so no to start. So I think that that is an interesting conversation. So what that leads me into is no, not at launch, maybe never. But this system and the way it's built has so many different like levers now baked into it that we can expand on it in a lot of interesting ways. So we talk about play and counterplay a lot. So maybe in the future there will be some sort of like gate warfare type of play we want to add, where you can drain cap from gates as an alternate means to taking them down if you don't want to destroy them, or you want to prevent people from going through them. And then maybe there's some way to sort of like reinforce or boost that or whatever. There's also more SOV upgrades that we can do that could impact the zones and the cost of zones or the ships and whatever. So I think this has just opened up a huge range of opportunities for us to do interesting design things.
I so agree with this decision to not have it be a part of it in the beginning. Firstly, because it's better for us to kind of get used to the world before we're giving tools to like supplement it. That's a way better way of balancing it broadly. But the thing is that so the question is, should capacitor, since it has a capacitor, should we be able to affect its capacitor in a more systemically normal way, right? Should we be able to cap drain it? Should we be able to cap it up? So on the one hand, if you're able to cap it up, then effectively the entire goal of this thing, this change, is completely made moot, right? The whole point is to make it so that like larger groups have these concerns that they cannot directly address just by throwing more people or more resources at the problem. If you could just throw in a couple of faxes at each gate to cap them up, they have those in spades. And so it would allow groups that were willing to do that to completely undermine the convention of this entire thing to begin with. That could be fine, but FC has to make the decision to make a system that effectively, like right now, it's a balance of how far you can project. And so the only way that you can handle this is by intelligently organizing your organizations, and again, like how it affects coalitions and all that stuff. If you changed it so that way they could just cap it up, now you've made it just, oh yeah, all you have to do is bring extra faxes. And that's how players will see it. They'll just see it as another excuse for why they need more players, why they need more faxes. FC is just trying to get us to buy skill injectors. And like, it just completely undermines the entire point. So then the question is like, well, what about neuting it out? The thing about neuting it out is that you can already, it's a flex structure. And a flex structure, when it goes into reinforce, turns off. So you can already just shoot at it. And in the first reinforcement, he says destroy it, but you don't even need to destroy it. You just need to take it down enough to reinforce it, in which case it is now offline until they can fix it. So there's already that method to disrupt it. So you could add an additional method to disrupt it, but it doesn't really feel like it adds another element to it, and it exposes it to being completely undermined by the fact that like faxes or whatever can just cap it up. So while it is a fun thing to keep in the back pocket, and as he said, there's other tools that he can do to maybe affect the costs of stuff, I think that making it something that can't just be trivialized or undermined through the use of ships is very much a necessary component to this change. I think that like it's a good idea to not go with that as a default and just hold it as an idea in reserve if you need to.
Yeah.
So no on that.
Counterpoint: Blood Raider ships exist. Blood Raider ships have lasers. Can I sneak ships into smaller wormholes? My pilot all have a Odyssey ship chained down? Yeah. Odysseus are great for getting through places, but their ship bay is not that big. You can bring like, I don't know, can you finish a cruiser in an Odysseus? Usually I go with a destroyer or 2 frigates, if I remember correctly.
Start. I think part of that's just we don't want to have like, that's just kind of reinforcing the problem we're trying to fix right now. And so we need this to go out in the state it is first, and then we can kind of look at other forms of systemic interaction.
Yeah, and that's
again, it has to do with how the players are going to fix the problem, right? So if you give players the ability to cap them up, or you give players the ability to change the costs, then that will be the solution that the players focus on, right? How do I implement the correct bonuses to the system? How do I make sure I have faxes in all the places that I need to in order to affect it? That will be the way that players think about fixing the problem. Because those are not options, then the only solution is to organize your territory correctly, to make terrain matter. And that ultimately is the real goal. Because remember, this has never been about Ensilibixes. This is about terrain and how alliances and coalitions organize themselves. That's what this is about. And just allowing them to fax it up isn't going to help with that. Adi can hold 3 to 4 frigates, or 1 destroyer, 1 frigate. That sounds right. Eliminates just subcapitals that can supply capacitor to a Stargate. You introduce some new level of limitations. Again, doesn't matter what it is. If you can do it, then that will become like a solution for it. They'll just, all it'll do is make everybody complain even more about alphas, because now everybody just has an alpha in an Osprey in those systems. And so everybody kind of jumps through and then logs in their alpha, everybody logs in their alpha alts, caps the thing up really quick. And then, so many people jump out, from their main characters, jump through, keep capping it up. The point is that it changes the solution that players devise for the problem. And if given the opportunity, players will optimize the fun out of their own game. So if you give them this really annoying, painful, crappy way of making it still work the same way, they're more often than not going to just do it that way and then complain about it the entire time. This forces them into the solution of organizing your space and your territories and your home systems. And then once that transition, that cognitive paradigm shift has happened, then you can introduce tools that allow players that are thinking that way to better arrange themselves. Whereas if you offer those tools ahead of time, people will, if all you have is a hammer, then everything's a nail, right?
That's a really good point as well. We've done like a couple of things to force projection over the years, like the Revenant Major update. We made the Anzablex jump gates like the range a little bit closer in, so when you jump through it, you're a little bit closer, easier to disrupt. We've done a couple of, made them like Metanox style reinforcement on there, moved them off of the Citadels, let the Grandfathers one stay there. We've done a couple of things, but this is going to be the first real big adjustment to force projection.
Yeah, it's a non-tuning. This is more of a mechanical system change. Yeah,
and I know we've said this before, but like this isn't. It's not like
it's also a blow to all those grandfathered in systems, right? Just like when Goonswarm has to move and all that stuff. Like the grandfathered in things are very, very strong, but they're arranged on the old system of control. So now the value of the systems have changed, and now the way that Ensilibixes are arranged for optimal routing has changed. And so the chances that those grandfathered Stargates or Ensilibixes are just as valuable as they once were goes down every single time those kinds of changes happen.
One and done now. Force projection solved.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said up top, we know that there's a bunch of other contributing factors.
What if they cap the amount of people allowed to use Ensilibix Stargates jumping thing to a limit of up to 5 to 10 or 25 to 20k of pilots per corp or alliance or coalition? I mean, that's basically what they're doing, but they're also making it so it's not bound to coalitions. Like that would be a way to do it, but the whole point of this is to like break up a little bit of that intermeshing that occurs between coalitions, right? Ensilibixes being alliance only is going to be, that's in my opinion, that's the change. That's the change in which everything else is kind of derived from. Now, obviously, the headquarters range and range thing is probably what led to the access list change. But that idea that like there's a functional difference between coalitions and alliances again, even with things that uses access lists, is probably going to be the biggest piece of this change in like the long run effects.
Factors. I also don't know, like in general, like to the full honesty to everybody, like there's no way we know every single side effect of putting this out there, right?
Yeah, there's going to be some intermeshing. Like I said, you might want to like strategically decide that it's like, okay, well, I have this endpoint here, so that way we can come in and then maybe bridge further or whatever. But the point is that it's now going to take a lot of work, a lot of consideration, and it isn't just a gimme between the coalitions. And so that allows, there's a little bit more friction. There's more chance that when you call your coalition mate, they don't show up. And that creates like emotional friction between those different coalition partners and begins the excuse me, it begins the act of cracking those groups apart.
Yeah.
Like I am excited to be surprised by players. That's part of the joy of working on Eve. And so, this is step one. And I think in that sort of vein, just to, share more philosophy and design direction here, I think there's been points in the past where we felt a little bit paralyzed because if we can't solve this problem and then that problem and then that problem and then that problem all at once, then we're not going to try and then we don't do anything for a long time. So I'd rather
Perfect
just
is
be
the enemy of the
bold and
good.
take this first step and be like, absolutely, there's going to be knock-ons that we're not aware of, and that's okay. We'll get to that next. We'll prioritize those, and then we'll look at these other components.
Fail faster. I love this idea. We just you can brainstorm every single thing. You're never going to get a perfect solution. It's good to just make a thing like this, see how it works, and then see whether or not it accomplishes the goals that you want, and then work from there.
Of force projection and just start knocking them off one at a time. But this is one of the biggest ones for us to start with. So absolutely not done.
Yeah, and we're really excited for players to see some of these numbers and come up with those, break the system. These are based on, as you were saying before, the mass of the ship and also kind of the power level.
Yeah.
Right, not completely mass, right? You can see
Exactly.
Hullers and Exhumers. Those are ships that have a lot of mass, but we know that people want to go out and use their space, utilize their space. We don't want to...
I mean, you can learn from perfect solutions, but really what you learn is, yep, that was good. And you don't necessarily understand what was and wasn't good. Also, what is a perfect solution? Perfect is a dangerous term to throw around.
We don't want to punish your day-to-day space job activity.
Exactly.
This is about moving a huge
Agile
military power
methodology.
all around the map with ease.
Yeah.
Right? Those movements should come, as you were saying, at a bit of a cost.
Exactly. And I mean, again, to reinforce the statement I made earlier about this being a separate cost and mass, that's exactly a part of it too, is if we see the purpose of a ship and why it's not being used in the system and we need it to be used more, we don't have to mess with mass. We can mess with these Ansiblex costs instead.
Right on. Okay.
It's also going to make some interesting things too, right? Because Exhumers are so cheap. It makes me wonder how... Hold on. Where's a cruiser? 10 versus 1. Do you know how good skiff balls are going to be after this? We're actually going to see periphery defenses using things like skiffs and rokes and stuff instead of normal cruisers. That'd be amazing.
Okay, so this is really interesting. I'm very excited for players to see this.
I love it. Always lemons. That's right. That's on top of everything else. You're right. Primate can use any not only for free. A Primate should be able to use any Ancillabixes, any Ancillabix ever, whether it's yours, whether it's not yours, whether you're on the access list or not. If there's an Ancillabix that is online, your Primate can jump through it. Make Primate great again, or at least good. I can't even say again. Not sure if the Primate was ever that great, but that'd be hilarious. When do they plan on making Rook Walls great again? That is a terrifying notion. Also, they're pretty good.
Very excited for them to break it down. Kind of
All the Corvettes in the game should be able to do that. So I'm a strong believer. One of the things that one of my more fringe things that I believe in is the idea of civilian ships. So Corvettes and shuttles should be considered civilian ships. So, for instance, they can always dock somewhere, like an NPC station, regardless of your security status, for example. They don't get flagged for things like being concorded, potentially. You could even make their cargo space smaller if that's what it need be. But more importantly, they cannot warp to anomalies or signatures. They can warp to other members within their own fleet, but they can't go to anomalies or signatures, maybe outside of the rookie system. The idea of civilian ships, because this goes into the idea of that, this actually came from back when I did invasions and stuff. The problem that I didn't have problems with people coming in and trying to loot my stuff, like ninja loot, the main reward. The problem that I had was that the ships that they were using to do it were Corvettes. So even if I did all the stuff correctly to get them and kill them or get rid of them, they would just reship instantly. They're committing nothing to the field. So I actually think that Corvettes and shuttles should be considered civilian ships and be given specific extra privileges as civilian ships. but also restrict them from doing things like content. So that way you can't have people in Corvettes harassing people in sites or whatever. Well, you can make sure Gallente completes its campaign. I'm not sure how Gallente completing their campaign would make Rorquals great again. Oh well, I guess you're right, because then the Gallente get the new excavator. Corvettes should have a special where they are not a civilian ship, but they're a military ship. They're somewhere in the middle. Well, the whole point of this was that I was tired of civilian ships being able to come to my sites, or like Corvettes specifically. So I throw in shuttles just for the funsies of it and like the yachts and whatnot. But ultimately, I think that Corvettes should not be allowed into basically any anomaly that's above a 1 of 10. They have no business being in there in the first place. You've committed nothing to the field. You should be able to do nothing.
Wrap their heads around it. I think there was one conversation that we saw pop up regularly of this change is going to make smaller groups have to fold into the larger groups, right? And I think part of that is based on A, just how these coalitions exist now, but also B, like, it did very much feel like if you don't have the full picture that it would be the haves versus the have-nots, right? And now that players can see this, Ansiblexes are going to be very limited in terms of projecting the force. So it's not really like, oh, one guy gets unlimited jump bridge use and the other alliance doesn't. So now everyone kind of gets like...
I mean, I think it's pretty easy to be like, oh yeah, we've determined that civilian ships are not allowed within DED 1 of 10 or like 2 of 10 or above sites. Like, it wouldn't be like Concord has control over what our ships can do. They allow us to go there. That's the beacon that lets us warp to that point in the first place. So they can just make it so we're not allowed to go there. I'm okay with the civilian ship being able to dock anywhere, but only if it hides your name from local or the overview. Stationing standings would ban the practice or the person. But if the station doesn't know it's you, then it's a lie being smuggled. Well, again, like I meant NPC stations more than anything. But yeah, I'm like, this also goes into the idea that like, I think that maybe potentially criminal flags and suspect flags shouldn't apply if you are in a civilian ship. And also low standings shouldn't apply if you're in a civilian ship. So that way, if you are neg 10, you can still go into high sec, but you have to be in a shuttle and like you don't automatically get killed or whatever, but you can do your diplomatic thing, whatever. This is one of those things that's kind of loosely sat in my head for like 7 years or more now. Well, really since Invasions. So, yeah, I mean, take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, you can utilize your space around you and immediately around you, but going far, not so much.
Yeah, exactly. So I, just to restate the piece of feedback or the concern from the community, it's really about like having alliances merge into one single massive alliance. I think that's what people were a little bit
everybody
concerned about.
suggests.
And like, again, it could happen, and we're not doing anything that says you can't do that. But I think that...
So the thing about this is everybody was like, okay, well, if I can't use my coalitions and syllabixes, then our entire coalition will have to become an alliance. But the problem with that is that means your entire alliance has only one headquarters and it radiates out from there. So that takes that entire coalition and basically crams it into that one alliance's space. Which, sure, maybe some coalitions are going to do that. But I think that people need to underestimate the desire for there to be identities. There's a reason why coalitions exist in the first place. Like it has always been better to just be an alliance than be in a coalition. There are a lot of other reasons why an alliance is good and has tools that a coalition does not have. And so like, there's going to be people that reject that idea, that don't want to be subsumed into the other alliance, and so will decide to remain their own independent entity. This is how, Aderon becomes fed up during the militia stuff instead of joining, Cowboy Bebop or Ardra or whatever. So yeah, sure, there's going to be some people that do that, but that, like, the alliance's footprint is constrained. And so, yeah, if an entire coalition of people pack themselves into a single alliance's territory, think of all the territory that's now available for everybody else. No, a coalition would have to be multiple alliances with multiple headquarters that are relying on each other, allegedly, for coordination and communication and support or security or whatever. but don't directly interact with each other in the same sort of way, except for some limited intermeshing that you could do. And again, like what happens when you now are calling upon your coalition leaders or mates, and they have extra problems getting there because it's not as logistically friendly anymore, so then they don't show up, and you remember that. That creates friction between the coalition members. This idea that everybody's just going to collapse in the same alliance is that is exactly what I was talking about earlier when it comes to trying to process a change based on the standards of the current system. This is an entirely different paradigm, and people will have to change the way they think about things. There will be some groups that do try to do this, and don't get me wrong, there will be plenty of people highlighting those changes. Every alliance that shuts its doors because they're collapsing into another alliance will be championed on Reddit as a sign, oh, how tragic it is that Y dot is now gone, or, you know, whatever, in order to make this seem like a bigger deal. But it basically is forcing people to, one way or another, shift into this new paradigm. Something I was noting in looking at some old reporting with coalitions, it used to be that alliances under attack usually had the larger numbers in the fleet, and the coalition fleet was just people that wanted to fight. And that was even back when jump bridges shared passwords. I mean, it's going to cause people that were already working together as one unit to become one unit, but they were already working together as one unit, right? If they were independent alliances that were working together as a coalition, they will continue to be that, right? I'm sure Brave is going to consume some other groups or, you know, whatever. We'll see. We'll see if Test and Brave stay as two different alliances after this. Place your bets.
Now, if we look at the numbers and maybe even go back one slide, if you don't mind here. Yeah. Like, I think it's really ineffective to do that, looking at this. So, for example, if you're an alliance and you live in Zone 4, right, if that's where your home has been, that's where you have everything, your base of operations set.
Sigma and Brave work together without goons coming down all the time. Well, that's also because goons knows that, like, the conflict is the fun. And, like, so, you know, this is why they have SIGs and stuff, where it's like the small group can go and have fun and get a certain amount of conflict. If the big group comes down, they're just looking to win. They're looking to roll them all over. They're looking to force the opponent to not even fight at all, right? So, you know, smaller groups are more encouraging of skirmishes, and you only bring in the big group when winning matters more than getting the fight.
And the mega alliance who you think you would want to join lives in, you know, their Zone 1 over there. If you join them, you're either going to have to move to their capital to take advantage of all of that, which then puts strain on resourcing in that area, right? Yeah. Or you're all going to agree that you're going to be incredibly restricted, because if you're jumping from Zone 4 outwards continually, like the cost and strain on those networks is going to be so huge.
I keep thinking about things like the floodplains, right? Where goons are going to want to still have a coalition, but it's more that they want there to be functional organizations that are friendly to them around their borders. So that way, those are the groups that take the big fights, not necessarily them, right? Like, so in the same way that we used to have, like, renting was a big thing. Now it's like meat shielding is going to be a big component to all of this. But it's like that meat shield isn't goons, because it's going to take a lot more effort for goons to actually come and reinforce them. They are going to be relied upon to handle themselves to a certain extent, which also is going to make them more independent to a certain extent. Now, obviously, if you're placed there by goons to be their floodplain and then you betray them, that's a bad idea, probably. But I mean, like, my point is that, like, it again, it changes the paradigm. It changes the way things work, which makes certain things more, again, cracks to form.
But I just think it's super inefficient. So we're actually seeing a lot of tension through the system on large.
No, goons moved to where they are, so they would be in the front lines against Horde. Brave was on the front. Wait, hold on. Did that? I'm not sorry. I didn't suggest that Brave that goons moved now because of that. What I'm saying is that goons have always had relationships with, like, their coalition has always been a way to kind of create a buffer state around themselves, and it's just that makes that, like, more like they have like those buffer states have to be more independent. But you're right that biggest movements that goons have done recently have been to put them on a more aggressive posture towards their enemies. I don't think that is true under Asher. Fair. My point was, hearing all of them talking about this, I thought about the floodplain theory from their previous defensible position and how that would have changed that. I'm not talking about how goons as they are structured right now, because as I said, they are in a much more aggressive stance at the moment. So they already changed their paradigm of arrangement. I was just thinking more broadly when it comes to more established, because the fear of this whole thing is about established territory more than anything, right? So that would assume like the reestablishment of things like floodplains. But what I'm talking about is how it would be different now versus before. Thanks, Sean, for pointing in those clarities.
Larger organizations. And that's not even to mention, I think, that there are actual like practical costs to those mergers.
Yeah.
And there are social costs, and there are political costs, and there are identity costs. And like, I think maybe some people will do this. That's fine,
Yeah.
and they'll figure it out. Maybe they'll solve some sort of puzzle. But I don't think that everybody's going to do this because of like even looking at the system and how it works. I think it's just too expensive to live that way.
And we were chatting a little bit. One of the best parts about working is we just get to chat about this type of stuff. Even when the cameras aren't on, we're just like sitting in the cantina eating.
Exactly.
Talking about what a healthy Eve looks like to us.
Yep.
And everyone's got their own little opinion and own little biases and little memories. But one thing that you brought up is like and I think you brought this up in the blog too, is this type of design is not meant to completely shut down a large alliance from existing or a large coalition from existing.
Yeah.
Like there's room for them.
Exactly.
Like, they serve a great purpose. But this is more of a way to...
I love it because it makes sprawl, or like it affects urban sprawl, not like, because the whole problem is like there's only so many sites for so many things. So the issue is that if everybody's going to have to be compressed into a tighter area, that gives them less systems to work with comfortably. And that is what is going to encourage there to be more organizations, right? Because as soon as it starts becoming where people are stepping on each other's systems for their ratting or whatever, then people are going to want to make their own organization so that way they can have their own space. And they're going to make a partnership with the existing empire. Hey, we're going to move in 15 light years over here, help us take this space, and then we'll be your ally here. And now we have allies, and that's the kind of coalition that we have, as opposed to this like entirely intermeshed coalition system that we have now.
To make it so that other people, that's not the only way to live, right?
Right. Yes. So the feeling, and I think the sentiment, and part of why we're doing this is that like smaller groups just feel that pressure to need to merge to survive.
Yeah.
And so we want to put pressure on those larger organizations. I think that where the logistical pressure of it currently isn't good enough for them to exist in these.
It's true. The idea that this affects smaller groups, not at all. Like no small alliance is capturing disparate enough territory, distance enough territory to require the zone 2, zone 3, zone 4. Like this is explicitly, even if you're like, okay, well, if it's part of a coalition, like the point is that like the smaller and tighter you are, the less of a footprint you need. And that's actually really good. It empowers smaller groups and weakens larger groups.
Sprawling empires. And so, that's a part of the reasoning for this change. And it's not to say you can't do that. I think the challenge is, can you do that rather for the bigger ones? And I'd love to see people who can, because there's nothing in this that says you can't. And I think that's part of the sandbox nature of EVE.
What if you take a floodplain, you have install upgrades to keep big alliances from using you or us as a content, you force to make sites for them? I mean, you're definitely going to see like that is a project, right? You're going to see like a SIG, like Goonswarm might spin off an entire alliance just to hold a territory now. But it still has to be a separate alliance, which means that all of those social connections are required to be maintained by the people.
It's just a new type of challenge and a new type of tension that exists in the universe now.
Right on. Well, it's been really great looking at some of these numbers and like I was saying, just contextualizing all of this together. Is there anything that you want to like just ask of players?
I think the nightmare scenario would be like Goonswarm 1, Goonswarm 2, Goonswarm 3, Goonswarm 4, Goonswarm 5, and like all of the Goonswarm alliances are all owned by alts of Asher and then you're supposed to have alts in all the different Goonswarm groups, so that way you can defend all the different Goonswarm group territories, and that's how Goonswarm now has this giant territory. I think that's the only real nightmare scenario that I've thought of so far, and even that's, I would argue, probably long-term unsustainable.
In terms of like feedback that like the teams will just kind of on board and maybe respond to. Is there any specific nuggets that you're looking for?
I know I keep saying Goonswarm is like the go-to. It's just because, like, in essence, they're the kind of the most organized one to do something crazy when it comes to like larger structures. I'm not saying anything positive or negative. I'm not trying to be negative about Goonswarm themselves. It's just if anybody's going to do some crazy empire building scheme, it's going to be them, right? Bring back CO2. I don't think there's any change in the game that that FC could do to make Goonswarm trust CO2 again. They're just the biggest, not just the biggest, but also the most likely to build some sort of meta infrastructure to control bigger territory than a single alliance. I mean, Brad is up there too, obviously. Judge, or what is his name? Yeah, was it just the Judge? Mr. Remove your hands. Such a weird thing to have happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, like we're pretty set, I think, on these jump numbers, but like, of course, feedback is good. It's probably more around the specific ships. There's probably use cases like the way that everybody lives and does their specific role in EVE. It's hard to fathom in design sometimes. So you can look at the ships that you use and the activities you do, maybe do some mental math around like every day I go with a fleet of this size with these ships. What would that cost us? What would that look like? And if you do that sort of exercise, I'd love to hear your feedback on these numbers. I think this is where we have some wiggle room for tuning and flexibility. So yeah, in general, I'd love to hear about that. And yeah, just show up. Just tell us what you're excited for. What are you scared of?
GigX.
And,
yeah.
I do read all the comments. All, I think 4,000 or whatever is in that post. I've gone through and pulled out some highlights, and there's been some good conversations. So
yeah. There's been so many, like, there's been such great discourse about this topic, even just over the weekend. Like, there's been some great like videos on YouTube that have gone up, some great live streams of people like breaking it down, trying to like theorize what it's going to mean. It's like, oh, we've gone too far, or we haven't gone far enough. Great memes as well. Memes are an effective form of communication.
Yeah, absolutely.
I absolutely love them.
Exactly.
But really, it's been.
You know what? No, I'm not even going to get into a topic of memes and mimetic conversation and stuff right
like,
now.
At least from
say that
when I say,
we're running out of time.
Players take really reasoned approaches, saying, "Hey, here's what my playstyle is like. Here's how this is going to positively or negatively affect me. Have you considered me?" FCB had this really good idea or good thought of like, there's an entire generation of players living in nullsec that have only been part of these mega coalitions, that have only used Ansiblexes like this. They've never seen anything else. They've never experienced anything else. So in that sense, change can be really scary. Like you're changing a core part of how I run across my empire.
Exactly.
And like those types of, that bit of feedback is also like super useful.
I think that the thing that I'd like to put out there is, after this goes out, this is going to be a new EVE. The way that people play is going to be different. Yeah. That's okay, right? Like, there's a new puzzle here, like I said, for us to solve, and it impacts everybody. So let's go out there, let's try it, let's solve it, and let's find what's interesting in this. I think the most helpful feedback, again, is like, if you give us feedback on the details of this stuff, if we focus on, well, why not fatigue or something like that? We're not doing fatigue, I think. So that doesn't help the conversation right now. So help us make this good and interesting. And again, I'm like, much like going back to the mining updates that we did, I will check in frequently. Yeah. I will listen to feedback, and we'll make tuning updates along the way. We know this is not going to survive the first, blush as it goes out there and people start using it, this ship or that ship. Something's going to happen. So we'll just keep making updates, and we'll get it to a good place together.
Right on. And yeah, I think that's the one thing that players have really come to appreciate and expect from FC Okami. Is just like, you're always there talking to them. It might not always be delivering the news they want. Yeah. But they, if I can speak for everyone that's an EVE player, they love the candor and the fact that you're always out there, always reading the
It's so true that, like, if anything, what Okami has done is changed the way that we think about FC as a company. So much before him, if something comes out, everybody stresses out about it because CCP has this tendency to like do a thing and then they never touch it again for like the next decade. So like, if there is a faction warfare rebalance, if there's anything wrong with it, then it's extremely stressful to people because they think that it's just going to be abandoned for the next decade. But like, what CCP/FC has done is gotten a lot more iterative, and I think Okami has definitely been the face of that. I think it started before him, but he's definitely become the face of that, and people are now more confident that changes will problems will continue to be being addressed. I think that he's won them over a lot with things like the Revenant Major Update and stuff like that. So that hopefully makes things better, and like that changes the way that we think about this. Because like, imagine right now if we thought like, okay, well, this is going to be it, and like we're never going to see a change to sovereignty for like the next 5 years after this. Whatever is good, and whatever is bad. Maybe we'll get a little bit of changes here and there. Like that stresses you out a lot more than, hey, this is just the beginning of an ongoing project, which he's kind of proven it to be.
4,000 comments.
Yeah.
The bad memes, like we throw them at
kidding.
your desk even if you don't want to see them sometimes. And even the good ones too.
And I've got thick skin for the silly, fun ones as well. I might, take that job of pumping gas. It might be less stressful than this sometimes, but yeah.
There you go.
Sounds like a chill.
Well, right
way
on.
to go.
It's been really great chatting with you about force projection stuff. It's a huge topic in Eve's community. It's really exciting to be able to see some more of the numbers. And yeah, just thanks for chatting with us, man.
Yeah, thank you, Swift. I'm excited to keep talking about this, and very excited to see what Eve is like in a year from now. I think that's when.
Okay, cool. So we got one more video to go over. We don't have a lot of time, but I do want to cover the, man, should we cover, I hate continuing to put off the Avalon thing. Maybe if I feel like we need to dig into it even more, then we'll do it another time, but I do want to watch the Vanguard Operation Avalon video. So let's go ahead and jump into that. We're running low on time. So we'll see how far we get and whether or not we want to skip through some of this.
My plan is to buy a corgi and call it Doom Train. So I just wanted a cute little thing that runs around and people are like, oh, what's it called? I'm like, Doom Train. Doom Train. Yeah. Let's go. Ready? You ready for the actual clacker this time? I'm ready. And action in 3, 2, 1.
Seamless. Yeah, absolutely seamless. Hello and welcome to the Vanguard Uplink podcast. I am your host, FC Gortz, and joining me, as per conditions of his contract, is the one, the only, FC Collins.
Thank you.
We are tired. We're tired.
Long day.
Long day, long fortnight. We are coming off the back of...
I love the fact that yeah, they're correct. It was a fortnight. It was 2 weeks, but it is funny for them to evoke the word fortnight, right? Just like they use the word Apex a few too many times in the Avalon playtest.
Operation Avalon. We have chucked a bucket of ice water over the servers. Everything's off now. It's off. It still continues on EVE Online.
Don't chuck ice water on servers.
Yep,
for a little
it
bit. So you, the viewer, have sent in several questions, which we're going to attempt to get through today, some of which we can't quite answer yet because Avalon is still ongoing. However, let's dive into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Friend of the show, Denny Fleetfoot.
Oh, Denny.
Hello, Denny.
Hey, Denny.
You love your words, Denny. Oh, if you just start a roaring fire,
Yeah.
read a Denny post.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Anyway, Denny asks, has there been a specific criticism or indeed compliment that has completely blindsided you about something you never saw coming?
Oh, yeah, I think it's quite interesting. So I've been spending a lot of my time going through the data from, how people have been playing the game. We got a significant number of survey results back as well. And obviously we've been trawling through Reddit, Discord, and the like. According to the data, people like tutorials. And we don't have any.
Oh yeah.
So
That's right. They removed one of the things is that they removed the tutorial or whatever from Vanguard. I was kind of surprised by that, but yeah, I could see how they get. It did have some issues.
there's been an understanding problem with a lot of people coming in fresh to the game. Only natural. We're doing things a bit differently in certain places compared to a lot of conventional shooters. People are playing a lot of Marathon, a lot of Arc Raiders, a lot of Call of Duty right now, and there's a lot of people playing Tarkov, and they're trying our game out, and we're doing things differently than those games are doing, and they're going, and they're struggling a little bit. We're not teaching players how to get through it. Stuff like how some of our healing works and how some of our weapon customization works. So it's been humbling for.
That's true. There's a lot of things in Vanguard this play session that I only really knew instinctively by playing previous game play sessions. By the way, like the stream, thumbs up down below.
For us to kind of see that and go, okay, we have to really invest in like a decent onboarding. We had that in Operation Nemesis, but we turned it off this time. We want to get people into the meat and bones of the experience, and people have been enjoying that. But that does mean that there's been a significant gap in kind of people coming in and understanding what to do and learning some of the more intricate things about the game. So that was not hugely surprising. We got a lot of feedback in November being like, I don't want a tutorial, I just want to get straight into the game. And we're like, okay, let's test that. And we've tested it, and we're like, no, we need to find a nice little halfway house in between. So what's a nice compliment, though, that someone has had? Well, I think due to the balance, I knew it would be used. I didn't think it would be exploited so much, but the Nova Knife...
The Nova Knife was very strong.
Was not just enjoyed, was exploited. And I think we knew it was going to be quite powerful and it was going to be quite good in a fight, but I don't think we expected people to just wholesale use it as their primary weapon. So
Yeah, I watched many streams.
It's easy, skip button or training mode. I mean, yeah, obviously it is easy, but it's easy to say what the design would be, but it is still a thing that needs to be implemented. You now need to keep track of whether or not the person has gone through the training. You need to initiate the training if they go through, if it needs to be done. You need to skip it if it doesn't need to be done. You need to allow them to skip out of it. You need to be able to, what happens if somebody, what if somebody's in the middle of the tutorial and their game crashes? It's just like, it's easy to say, oh, just have the tutorial and have this thing that lets you skip it. But that also just means that they have to put in the effort to make that whole thing work. Again, they had to rebuild a lot of stuff for the alpha. So it's not like they could necessarily just import the previous one in. It's not quite that simple, even though I do agree with you. But I can see where they would be like, let's see what happens if we don't have it at all. We're testing the theory. And good point. I mean, again, it's just a playtest.
Bumbledore the Wizard with the ramming speed. I think everyone just turned into that robot from Futurama with the just stabbing crazy. Just, we're making a shooter game and everyone's just like,
well, that's our own fault.
Hey, a lesson learned.
Yeah.
A lesson learned. Are you able to say,
cool.
Still a Denny Fleetwood question,
Lovely.
What was the highest concurrent player count we got?
Yeah, so I don't know off the top of my head what the highest concurrent player count was, but I can say we've had the highest concurrent player count that we've ever had in a playtest, even more so than First Strike back in when we first launched. We also had the most number of players play this game over the course of the 2 weeks, more so than First Strike. This is the first event where we've been able to beat First Strike. It's been phenomenal.
Nice. And that's down to you.
Yes.
Thank you for taking part.
Thank you.
I mean, a lot of that's also going to be the fact that it's available on Steam. So there's going to be at least some of the population that's basically integrating into it without actually having the EVE context, which is going to be interesting too.
We were asking you to take part. You bloody did. And it is appreciated, despite us not sleeping.
Yes.
God. All right, let's move on from Denny. Denny, thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
Okay, now, Blind Cyborg. He does this, but
okay.
Yeah, he's being funny, but it kind of raises an interesting point for me. His question was, how many Vanguards does it take to screw in a light bulb? And I know you're being funny, but I don't know, for me, watching the stream, it was interesting to see people starting to team up.
Yeah.
Like, we had the auto-join to pair people up together, and it was just fascinating to watch people like, I'm a lone wolf, and then suddenly like, I'm going to need some help.
Yeah, one of my favorite pieces of feedback that we saw, I think it was a comment on Reddit, which was how we're helping to kind of break some of the stigma around squad play, is somebody accidentally went and joined into a squad. They're like, I'm only going to play solo. I'm not going to play with other people. They accidentally join in a squad and they find that they're collaborating. They're communicating together. They're deciding to take on POIs. They're all helping each other finish objectives in their expeditions.
Actually, I think that's what I probably should have done more. Obviously I had friends that wanted to play with me, so I mostly drafted with them. But I did drop the very first time without unchecking the thing, and so I just got put in with a couple of extra random people. And it worked out okay. It's actually really surprising, especially when they took out friendly fire. Like, it makes it so that the like rando groups thing actually ends up kind of working out, even if you don't really communicate with each other very well. You can ignore each other, but like I found myself kind of shadowing the other dude, and we by the end of it we were working together.
And the person was like, and I didn't go back to playing solo since. And it's really nice because this game is better in a squad. You are playing it on hard mode when you're playing solo. But to actually answer the question, it's none. There are no light bulbs 21,000 years in the future.
It's true. It's just fueled
everything just runs off of what I know, probably proto LED. I know.
We're going to have to get JS into answer this.
JS needs to find out. He needs to write some lore about what the light bulbs are in the universe.
Come on, JS. You've had 2 weeks off.
The bulbs died a long
There's a flashlight, so there has to be something.
time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do.
What is it that the sniper's pointing at you when they're shooting at you?
To further that point, I was watching a number of streams where, like you say, there's 3 people cast in together. and especially around the fuel tower, it was really fun to see like 2 groups of 3 run into each other and like, okay, let's do this together, and then the 6 becomes a 9, and they're all running up to take on the oppressor.
Yeah, no, that certainly didn't happen. I remember I was doing one raid with a couple of randoms, and we got halfway up the tower, and we could see that there was another team at the bottom of the tower. We were like, quick! We just raced our way up there, and it was one of them was like, no.
I wouldn't too much about having the most players in the game was at Concord playtest numbers. I think he probably has a pretty good idea of what their peak was, and just like putting out those sorts of absolute numbers might not be great for them, but it's just a playtest. We'll see where things go. Again, the bigger one's going to be this winter, but yeah, I do get the vibe that like he doesn't really want to share the absolute numbers, but saying it's the biggest so far is a good thing to say.
We're going to wait for them. And we did. We waited for them. We got the jump on them. And we left with nothing because we lost to the oppressors on the roof anyway. So it didn't even matter.
I literally saw, it might have actually been Blind Cyborg himself, like finish the oppressors and then just take the sniper and just saw a group start to make their way up the tower and was just, you people are monsters.
Good point.
There's a YouTube video I keep getting recommended now, which is someone doing a solo run on the fuel tower. I need to go and watch that.
Oh, that'd be
Impressive
good.
stuff. Speaking of series regulars, Sam, the player who's, I've not got the official stats in, but I'm going to hazard a guess, killed the most FC people playing.
Oh, okay.
Sam, you're a menace. Sam says, do you think the current PvE experience is sufficient to keep the PvE players into the game? And are we thinking about PvE only modes?
So to answer the first question, no. I don't think the PvE experience in the game right now is enough to satisfy or satiate the PvE players, which is why we're working on adding security statuses to the map. So there'll be a variant of the Lost Convoy map, which is a high-sec variant, and that will be a lot more PvE driven. It won't be solely PvE.
The thing I found weirdest about it was the fact that like this was the time to have all PvP turned off, because like everybody's vanguards. It was so weird for me that like, okay, the whole thing is that we're infiltrating this facility as the vanguard, but then when I run into other vanguard, we're also like fighting each other. It seems so weird. Like, I get that there's probably some excuse for it all, but like it didn't feel right to me. It felt like we should all be vanguard. Now later playtests, obviously when you have your own sub organizations or whatever, that could be meaningful, but like it seems like that was actually one of the discouraging things for me this event, was the framing didn't really imply that PvP should be like a big thing.
It won't be just you there. It's what we call mingle player, where there'll be other players on the map, but you won't be able to deal.
Yes, but it's an extraction shooter. The whole draw is shooting people in the back. I agree. And like I said, like in the end, when we all have our own bastions, it'll make sense. But given the current moment of the plot, it felt wrong for us to all be, I'm working for Avalon and you're working for Avalon, but now we want to kill each other because we're both trying to do the same thing for the same people. Like we should have conflicting goals. One person should be securing a place and the other person assaulting the place. But we both are working for Avalon and we're both being told to assault this place. And now we're killing each other over it.
PvP damage to one another.
Is that the actual name for it?
Oh, well,
I
keep hearing it. It's brilliant. It's mingle. Yeah, it's mingle player. So you and lots of other players and your squad that you drop down with, you'll still be dropping down to Lost Convoy, but there won't be any PvP damage. What we've got at the moment will be the equivalent of low sec, and you're probably going to ask me this a bit later, but maybe more PvP oriented experiences lean into null sec. But that's something we're going to be introducing into the game in the next update in November. And I think that what that will do, not only will it help with what we talked.
As I've said before, like I'm getting older, so like a PvE version of the game is definitely something that would be more attractive to me. I wanted to drop into it more to do more exploration, but just having to deal with everybody wanting to kill me is so fucking annoying when what you're trying to do is enjoy and take in the environments, you know?
About kind of the onboarding, new players going to high sec first, going and learning the game without having to worry about other players kind of ganking them. And
isn't that how it's been the entire time for the test, though? The Vanguard have been doing jobs for the same organization? No, because, like, okay, so before, the Vanguard all worked for the Deathless, and the Deathless was contracting out the Vanguard to the different organizations. So it made sense that you were both sides of the fight, because the Deathless was more just wanting to make sure that his Vanguard were being used as a tool than anything else. But in this case, it's Avalon. It's a very specific subset of Vanguard. It's a single bastion. Since you're all from a single bastion and you're trying to obtain the objectives of that bastion, you should be allied with each other. If somebody picked up like an Amar task, maybe they should be PvP oriented. But like everybody who's doing an Avalon task should all be part of the same team. You should be seen like, oh, that guy's actually working for Avalon right now. Never mind. I want him to be successful because I'm trying to make Avalon successful. Oh, that dude's working for the Amar. Kill him, right? That's what I would like to see. And I think it's going to only become more critical as we go forward, since they've changed the fundamentals of who the Vanguard are by them escaping the Deathless.
And then kind of graduating up into dipping your toes in low sec, where there is PvP damage, where the PvE might be a bit harder. We do have some ambitions. I know we've tested this previously around the idea of maybe creating very specific and special PvE skirmishes that you can go on, but we're first going to trial with making a high sec version of the map.
I mean, just the fact that they're taking PvE seriously makes them significantly better than Dust 514, Valkyrie, Gunjack. Well, I guess Gunjack isn't a really good example, but like a lot of their previous instances. They usually never think about PvE, and this has been one of my biggest bugaboos in the past. So glad they're at least thinking about it.
That doesn't have PvP enabled, so you can get that kind of PvE experience there.
That pretty much answers two of the other Sam questions that we got. Is dedicated PvP mode still on the roadmap?
It is. We want to play around with nullsec being more PvP oriented, where there isn't a strong or any PvE presence, and it's about creating an environment where we still want it to be a bit sandboxy. I know before when we had a PvP mode, it was very...
It's not a sandbox, not a sandbox, not a sandbox. There's no sandbox element whatsoever, not even a tiniest bit, barely the tiniest bit of sandbox element in Vanguard as it is right now. Sorry.
Traditional, it's like a 9v9 conquest mode. We're thinking about, and this is just early experiments at this phase. This might not make it into the game, but like, what does like a 3v3v3 kind of look like? It's a bit sandboxy still. We put a goal in the middle. Maybe there's a squire core on the map, and it's about which team can get there, get the squire core, kill everyone else, and get out first. So that's what I would like.
Open zone does not mean sandbox. If you're not able to affect the world around you in some sort of way that affects the people around you, it's not a sandbox. If you can't build up fortifications, if you can't... Yeah, never mind.
Like to reserve nullsec 4 as those more kind of hellscapey PvP experiences that are more at the tail end of the experience. You start off in high sec, you kind of learn your bearings. It's lower risk, but there is generally lower reward. You graduate into low sec where there is PvP damage enabled. That's kind of your Goldilocks experience for the game. And then when you feel like you need certain resources for maybe some future features about how we might want to do weapon upgrading, you have to kind of dip your toe into nullsec.
I think there will be, especially a number of the newer people that came on for Operation Avalon will be very happy to hear you use Eve terminology. I think that's a feedback that I got of like, how does this slot in together? And it wasn't.
There's a lot of things there's a lot of sand in the sandbox in Eve. There's structures, there's market orders, there's all these different ways in which you can create. There's freelance projects. These are sandboxy elements, right? The ability to create things and change the world around you. There's no way for you to change the world in Vanguard other than triggering like the defense systems of the blockade unit or whatever.
Until the Eve players came in and were having a little look and a little.
Like players should be like the extraction zones should have to be built by the player. Like what if the zone when you first get to the site, when the site first spawns, there are no extraction sites. Somebody has to build an extraction site. And then somebody else could blow it up, or after a period of time, Mordu blow it up or whatever. But like that would be sandboxy. Not just having an open area where people are doing different things does not bias. That's a big theme park. Right now, Vanguard is just a big open world theme park. Disney World of sorts.
Try that.
Yeah. It just works really nicely for us. It means we can do this without having to lean into something like aggression-based matchmaking to kind of create the pools. Putting the agency in your hand is if you don't want other players to be killing you and you want that more PvE-driven experience, you're deploying down to high-sec versions of the maps. Or if you want something a bit spicier, you're going down into low-sec or null-sec, and it kind of puts it in your hands. And it means in a lot of these games, sorry to waffle on about this, something that works really well is when you've got those non-PvE experiences, but they're still multiplayer, is you get a lot more of the veteran players going down and helping newer players through their experience. Newer players don't have to worry about being killed by every other player. Any other player that they see on the field is a much stronger opportunity for collaboration because you cannot fight each other.
Hashtag mingle player.
Hashtag mingle player.
The final Sam question, which made me go, Sam, was was the poor server performance. Is that going to be addressed before November?
No, we're going to make it worse.
Sam.
Yeah, of course we are. We've been analysing quite strongly what might be causing those issues, especially in certain territories as well, in certain server regions. The team are already looking at it now and going for the full investigation plan to identify any issues and make sure they're addressed for the next test, to the point where we might want to run you heard it here first. You might want to run a tech test coming up. So if you're not in the Discord, get in the Discord so you can join what might be a tech test some server performance improvements that we make very soon.
Yeah, I saw you going all over because you were with Chaos. You did a stream with
Yeah,
Chaos.
I know. It was quite nice actually. It was like 7 p.m. in the evening for them, 8 o'clock in the morning for me. And we were both on the US East servers.
Yeah.
So that was incredibly fun. I can't remember the friend who he brought along, but being in a squad with Chaos and his friend was that was.
One of the things I find very interesting, so normally when I see different servers, I think that they're all in the same location, right? And they just give them different things to give them different time zones. But we tested it, and it was very clear that the different servers were actually physically located where they say they were, right? I, being on the West Coast, could join US West, and I had the best ping out of all of my friends. When we joined AU, everybody had terrible pings. When we joined the EU, my EU buddies had good pings, and I had bad pings. So it's clear that the servers are where they physically are, which means that they're not being hosted by FC, right? These aren't their physical servers in London in the way that Eve is. These are servers or proxy servers that are in different areas, so likely hosted by AWS or elsewhere. And so on the one hand, like that means that they had to allocate a certain amount of power that they wanted to from there. It could potentially cost them more to have them be distributed that way, but it could also give them less control over how much power they get in any given one. But at the same time, given the playtest, they might not expect as much need for performance as later on, and so have lower amounts of server infrastructure like being rented for it at the time, right? I find it very fascinating because, like I said, like in World of Warcraft, often like all the servers are in one place, so it doesn't matter which server you connect to, your ping is roughly what it is. But these were clearly physically located where they were, so they have distributed servers, which obviously FC doesn't. I don't think FC owns servers in all these different time zones or locations. CCP talked about what their server structure would look like at FanFest. I might want to go back to that, but yeah, that was one of the things I noticed while doing the playtest.
That was the first stream I did of Avalon. That was really fun.
You guys were brutal. You really were. Let's keep it moving. Right, Tander09. I don't know if he's the 9th Tander or who knows.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows?
The 9th.
Tander the 9th. With the scramble drop suit fitting menu, there was a teaser for what looked like a new drop suit. Will we get more details for fittings of the drop suit itself as we get closer to November? I remember when people found this, and it was like wildfire.
Yeah, it's good. It's a concept we've been working on for the last couple of months to remove the Intaki swimsuit, the scuba suit, with something that is purpose-built and created for the Vanguard and represents that identity that we want to come through, the kind of brutal, efficient, elite, but also there's this kind of hint of a knightly order to them as well. The way that the helmet is styled, they've kind of got this pauldron on their arm, the way that the armor is styled is kind of very Templar. And that kind of resonates through with the lore behind the Vanguard as well, and the high table and all of that. So yes, we're very happy with the concepts that we've got internally. We've gone beyond concepts. Even just the other day was looking at some early versions of the 3D model of it running around in client, which is really cool. So we will definitely be showing that off a lot more in the run up to November. And suit modification as well is on the roadmap. We're figuring out right now at this moment if it fits for November. It's something I would really like to do. We've got weapon upgrading that we want to also do alongside there. Two really kind of big pieces of progression that I think the game is missing at the moment is weapon progression and suit progression.
No, what's missing is all those skins that they gave us for those guns for doing previous playtests and now don't work because those guns are gone.
Suit modification and suit fitting and suit progression will definitely be a part of this game. We're just trying to figure out if it comes in either in November or sometime early next year.
I want a red version of the suit that I only get because I have the mystery code from Dust 514.
That also answers the question that came in from Vargas, so I won't read it out. But Vargas, thank you for your question.
Okay, good. There we go.
A little bit behind the screen here. I've had a number of assets through in my community manager. You can use this for social, which is starting to show the suit fitting, and I'm like, is this approved? We're going to give them this?
Yeah.
So you might see it on social very soon.
Good.
Right, everyone's friend, your friend, my friend.
Who?
Your friend. Juno Tristan.
Oh, Juno, hello.
Friend of the show.
Yeah.
Juno has 2 questions. Here we go. His first question is, so what's the Squire core?
Okay. So, well, people might not like this answer. First and foremost, it is a bit of a MacGuffin. We did want to add something into the game that was a chase item for people to go for. That being said, there is a purpose for Squire Cores that might play a part in how you progress as a character moving forwards, whether that's using it to ascend and upgrade weapons, or whether that's used to upgrade your suit. I will leave you with just those tidbits, but it did what it was meant to do in terms of we wanted to add something into the game that people could chase for. You chased for it, you really did. And don't worry, there will be a purpose for it when the time comes. And that
I really like the Squire Core. My biggest problem with it, like, maybe the trigs have like spoiled me, but it was such a great opportunity for like storytelling, where it's like, oh well, what are the pieces that are needed for it and all that stuff. But when I looked at it, I didn't really feel like I got much of that in comparison to, like, say, the stuff that dropped before the release of like Vortron projectors that gave us some insight as to like what goes inside of those things. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it felt very much like it was just like generically, like, I didn't feel like I learned much about Nemesis going through the process of Avalon. I don't feel like I learned anything, which is disappointing.
that purpose goes beyond all of you.
The drifters are turning out to be a bit hard to run into. No luck finding Autothysian Lancers or spawning drifters within Tosing a Jovian Observatory. So weird that they're harder to find now. Man, there's something there. We got to keep looking into that.
That made serious ISK.
Yeah.
You Eve players. Juno does have a second question, though, which is what we'll use to finish up the show. Juno asks, what are the dev priorities for November?
I think for us right now, we want to address some of those issues that we talked about. We had a significant, more than we have ever had before. Like I said, this is the most played test that we had.
Sorry, I'm just thinking of like Kovu and Wonky just getting the bug reports through.
Yeah.
If you think we look tired,
Yes.
you'll see.
Yeah. But we had a significant number, a very high percentage. The majority of players that had played during Operation Avalon had never played Vanguard before, but really importantly as well, never played Eve before. And that's fantastic for us. We want to bring.
And that's what I was saying. Like,
audience.
this playtest really was the first time that a whole bunch of people that didn't play Eve might have stumbled upon it, and that's important
in this universe. But with that comes a lack of onboarding that's currently in the game. So what we want to do is to ensure that those new people that are coming into the universe, that they're getting onboarding into the kind of the complexity and depth that we have, and that complexity and depth is being introduced over time. Alongside that, though, is just some really cool content that we want to add into the game, especially for people who are returning in terms of new weapons, like I said, with the security levels, hopefully adding some more PvE and hopefully more PvP-driven experiences. But we really want to add some depth into progression in the game. There isn't any progression in Operation Avalon at all, apart from just hoarding things. So we want to add a lot more meaning to the loot that you're getting and create more syncs for you to be able to pull those into very clear and very visual progression markers. Where we're leaning to at the moment is in how you can upgrade your weapons. So having a weapon, a blueprint, and being able to make weapons from that isn't just a one-off, that you can invest in that blueprint and upgrade through maybe different levels and different tiers of that weapon that give you more specialization, maybe better stats, or maybe more kind of convenience in places as well. So those are the kind of things that we're exploring at the moment. And as well as getting that new Vanguard suit into the game and getting that larger sense of identity of who you are. Those are the things that we're currently prioritizing at the moment. There's a lot of stuff as well out there in terms of how we keep pushing this game and its connection to EVE Online, but we're all balancing those things up at the moment based on a lot of the data that we're seeing and making some decisions literally right now this week on what's the most important things to concentrate on to ensure that November is a success, that it's fun, and that we have as many players play Operation Avalon and even more people have fun with it than before.
Thank you very much, FC.
The one thing I will say, like, right now about it is that, like, they really need to add in this take from Eve Frontiers, where there's like meta accomplishments where, because like the fact that everything gets wiped at the end makes it so hard to commit deeply into a Vanguard playtest. So if they can like make a thing like the Grace and Eve, like where as you go through the Frontier cycles, your progress there then gets transferred into a meta currency that you pick up between playstations. Getting the skin or whatever unlocked is cool, but like if I'm going to grind for some higher level progression, I want that to become something, right? And I get 40 points instead of 20 points or whatever, right? It's okay for it to be wiped, but there needs to be some sort of point record thing, something that makes it feel like there's a reason why I'm doing this progress, and it's not just all going to get washed away in the tide.
Collins, this is probably going to be your last podcast for a while because you're going to be busy.
I go back into the coffin after this, right? They just wake me up when November comes around.
That's exactly what they do. Yeah. You will probably see more of the FC crew here on the Uplink Pod.
All right, this is wrapping things up, so I think it's time for me to wrap things up too. Thank you guys so much. This has been This Week in Eve, our Eve Friday show. I'm going to try to be more lock in on Fridays. I'm actually interested in your guys' feedback. Does this idea of like doing it once a week on Friday, is that the correct way to do it? Is there good or bad on that, bad on that? Obviously, we'll still do special episodes anytime there's breaking news that's important enough to get into it. But this has been I feel like this is a good opportunity to kind of go over everything that's happened throughout the week, maybe prepare people for the weekend if there's something interesting going on, which I don't know if there's anything too fascinating that's going on this weekend. With all that said, I have been Ashtarothi. I've been playing this game since 2010, talking about it since 2012, and I'm here to put Eve into context for you, my fellow Imperians. Thank you guys so much. And if you can, please comment down below. Did you play Avalon? Did you have fun with it? Is there anything else? Because I'm trying to get other people's feedback. I'm actually still trying to formulate my thoughts about it. I have more to say about it, but we'll probably do that as we get closer and closer to the next playtest, potentially. Other than that, sorry, my bad. Make sure to get involved. The Yantey Victory channel. Yantey Victory. Hold on. Is it the... Yeah. For Yantey Victory channel in Eve for Yantey support. And of course, the Minmatar Fleet Alliance for supporting the Minmatar campaigns. I do want to cover more campaign stuff. We'll probably get into that next week or whatever. I'm very annoyed at the Minmatar build Pioneer task, but we do need more people to build Pioneers. There is a for Yantey Victory Discord, which is also linked in our in the Convocation of Imperians Discord, and we're trying to get people able to participate in that because the Yantey are working hard to try to organize to be able to take on their challenges to complete Operation Rogue Edge, along with the, like I said, the Minmatar Fleet Alliance is, of course, supporting the Stark Mariner Restoration. All that and more. I've been Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden. I'd like to give a special shout out to all my top tier supporters: 745 MPSI, Arydanika the Queen, Bad Boy Smooth, Ebo Elite, Erladis, Elange, Flash Gordon, Grims, May, Malak Starfire, Malin, Mercutan, Mayak, Morkar, Michael, Neelam, Alamon, Sheesh, Susuro, Thranz, and Rid. Thank you all so much, and thank you all for checking out the video, watching it all the way through, liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing with a friend, because that's how we get it out there. We make a more informed player base. A better player base makes a better EVE Online. I am an Ashtarothi. Until next time, I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden. Until next time, I'll see you in space.
Bring on the wrecking machine. For every city